Is your presentation in the SharePoint? Okay. So the way this has been working so far on SharePoint is you'll just click the trackpad to advance the slides. If you click, you can't go back unless you exit out to this window from the presentation. So, for example, we're here. Yes, click wisely. It's not a big deal if you have to go back, but just figured I'd let you know. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, everybody, welcome to day 3 of our marathon of hearings. I hope you're as energetic and enthused as I am to be back in the saddle. Next up, we have SAPEC, the Sexual Assault Prevention and Education Center, perhaps best well known for their landmark program, Jayhawk Skip the Flock, here to tell us a little bit more about what they do with our money. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone's time, and I know that this is a lot this week. So I appreciate that energy and however much you need to caffeinate yourself to be here today. One of the things that you'll see on your table is, as I know that you may not be out at some events this camp or this week or next week because you are immersed in this process, I did bring you a few of our consent-based Valentine cards that we will be launching this year. So if you don't have a chance to pick one up at a tabling event, we brought you a little smattering for you to choose from based on whatever your viewing preference is. This is what happens when you give my staff multiple streaming services and a Canva Pro account. So feel free to find some that work for you or that you'd like to give to people in your lives as we go through this process. Great. So if you're unfamiliar with the Sexual Assault Prevention and Education Center, also known as SAPEC, we provide the primary prevention education around sexual violence, intimate partner violence, and stalking here on campus. We talk about that we promote social change and the elimination of sexual violence through prevention, education, inclusive programming, and campus-wide collaboration. In the grand scheme of things on the university, we are a relatively new department. This is our 7th year that we have been here on campus, and this, I believe, is, correct me if I'm wrong, Casey, but our 3rd year or going into our 4th year of funding. Okay, so who makes up this team? We've had a lot of exponential growth over the last 7 years, so you can see a quick snapshot of who makes up our program. So besides myself, we have Kelsey Hunter, who is a prevention coordinator, and their specific focus is on selected populations. If you read the Q&A that I filled out for the for SAPEC, it details out based on CDC and Stop SV guidelines what selected population means in regards to who we're working with for prevention education. Next, we have Taylor Jones, who does our indicated population work. Jacqueline Carpenter, who does our universal programming, Jordan Smoot, who is our graduate assistant, Miles Hubbard is our undergrad student staff. And we are very excited to launch a new position this May. This is a position that was funded by the provost. And this position is specifically dedicated to prevention work, so prevention education, and also response development and faculty, staff, and 3Gs. I know this has been an issue championed by Student Senate for many years of what are we doing specifically to support our graduate students and our graduate students that are in paid positions, as well as support our faculty and staff to be better resources and respond to students' needs as they arise. That's what this position will do with a dedicated staff member taking over that space. We're very excited and have lots of fantastic ideas of how we will mirror some of our programming, such as Jayhawk Skip a Flock, creating standard onboarding practices and onboarding education for all new hires at KU, as well as continuing to work with the 72 graduate programs across campus to build out those skills and support structures. And that's an open position right now. We are in the recruitment process and we hope to have them on board by the end of the semester. Got this trackpad. A little bit about how we do our focus. As I mentioned, we do primary prevention education. Within the scope of gender-based violence work, we have primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. Primary prevention is what are we doing to change attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs before harm occurs. We are a very evidence-based office with our focus. So we know we have limited funds and limited time, as well as limited attention spans with our students. So when we do program, we make sure that we're meeting those verified and validated outcomes that have been shown to reduce harm and shown to increase positive experiences on college campuses. So we've got 4 main pockets we work with. You can break those down further if you would like. But our 4 main target areas are increased promotion of social norms that protect against violence. We create protective environments to reduce harm and experiences of harm across campus. We teach skills to prevent sexual violence. Those skills are taught within the primary prevention mode, not within secondary prevention, which would be something we think about as harm reduction or risk reduction, such as self-defense classes. That's not what we do. We do primary prevention. And then our last one is to support survivors to lessen that harm. That's that tertiary prevention, which is what do we do after harm's already occurred to reduce the total impact, reduce chances of secondary victimization, and hopefully maintain that student at the institution if it's the correct and healthy thing for them during their healing process. So as I go through a selected program kind of overview, hopefully you can see how these 4 areas are built in with all of our programs. So we are not a throw it against the wall, see if it sticks office. We are, how do we know that we have verified outcomes that will come from these programs? So a quick snapshot of some signature programs. I'll start with this year, just the fall semester. We're very excited to be able to bring back Jayhawk's Give a Flock, which is an evidence-based pro-social bystander training program. It's one of the largest evidence-based programs in the country. We used to get to say it's the largest, but as SAPAC has done benchmarking work for the last 7 years, programs are catching up, which is really great. And we're glad to see that standard of practice is increasing across higher education, but we're still one of the largest with 4,000 first-year students going through Jayhawk's Give a Flock this fall. We also provide the Gender-Based Violence Prevention Seminar, which is a 1 credit hour educational seminar done in partnership with Leadership Studies and also in collaboration as a required academic course for Kansas Athletics, Pan-Hellenic Association, and the Interfraternity Council new members. That's about 1,100 students who are enrolled in that every year, and this year specifically. We also, just in the fall, have worked with 652 students in a variety of trainings and programs that would fall under that indicated population. If you remember back from that Q&A that you have, indicated populations are students who hold identities which create increased risk factors for them to cause harm based on gender, age, and relation to community and social organizations on campus. And then this is our 2nd year of our Prevention is Possible research study. This is a prevention longitudinal cohort model prevention study in partnership with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. We have our 2 cohorts that ran this year. It started last year with cohort 1. This year we've got 2 cohorts going for first-year students, and we had 927 students participate in that research study, which will be one of the only longitudinal prevention research studies on record. So we're really excited for those findings to share across higher education. Last year, you can see kind of a broader scope. So the online training, Vector Solutions, we have a 92% enrollment and completion rate last year for students for that online training. As we've heard from Vector, we have that one of the highest completion rates of any of their users across their bases. Last year for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is in April, we had just a little over 1,000 participants in our 17 different programs. And then last year, we provided 103 unique programs. Unique meaning that are, even though we have 118 sections of Jayhawk's Give a Flock, we count that as one program. Even though we have 72 sections of the Gender-Based Violence Prevention Seminar, we count that as one program. So that is 103 unique programs that we offered last year to over 6,800 participants in those in-person programs. So that's a snapshot of some of our programs and that scope of impact. Let's look at that cost breakdown. Now, this financial piece isn't all from student fees because we have a variety of financial means that are supporting our programming. So this isn't a dollar per dollar from what we receive from student fees, but I did want you to have a metrics of what this costs to run these programs that we just talked about. Jayhawk's Give a Flock costs us on average $3 per student who participates. The gender-based violence prevention seminar costs us about $25 per student who's enrolled in that course. Our indicated population programs cost us about $5 per student. And then our prevention is possible research study costs us around $5 per student who participates in that. There's an incentivized piece of that. If you participate in the research study, you receive a dining incentive. That incentive will go up this next year to reflect inflation cost. And then Vector Solutions, that is funded out of the provost office and it costs around $1 a student. Sexual Assault Awareness Month. It costs us about $6 per student. Part of that is because that's usually when we roll out our mobile billboard campaign, which is also known as the Jayhawk's Heart Consent t-shirts that are ever popular. And our general programming outside of these signature programs costs about $2 per student as we facilitate that. So again, not all of that is funded by student fees, but it does give you an overview of what our cost per use breakdown is. So let's look a little bit about student fees in specific. This year, we are not asking for an increase. Student Senate was very generous with us last year, not only funding us at our full increase ask, but also designating funding higher than our ask last year. This meets our needs and allows us to provide the robust programming that we just talked about. So with that $2.70, we're able to fund a full-time staff member that is for Taylor Jones, who does our indicated population work. So specifically working with students who hold identities that create an increased risk that they will cause harm. That also allows us to fund our part-time graduate assistant, to fund our part-time student staff, to fund Jayhawk's Give a Flock, which is cost about $15,000, and to fund our Sexual Assault Awareness Month programming. If we look at a cost reduction of 5%, where we see our reduction down is in decreasing the amount of undergraduate student staff that we will employ for this upcoming year and decreasing our amount of financial support for Sexual Assault Awareness Month that comes through our student fees. And then our 10% reduction, you see it go down even more. That would reduce the number of student staff that we are able to employ, as well as reduce the commitment for Sexual Assault Awareness Month from our student fee allocations. That was 10 pounds of information in a 5-pound bag, and I appreciate folks hanging in there with me. What questions do you have for me? Clarifications I can provide?
I can go first. I'm just curious, what defines an indicated population? How do you make that determination?
So the STOP SV grant, which is a federal toolkit, as well as the Center for Disease Control, looks at factors that are in play for folks who are most likely to and have been found to cause harm at elevated rates. And that includes identity. So folks who are identified as male, specifically research shows for cis men, have higher rates of sexual violence than folks who do not identify as cis men. Cis men between the ages of 16 and 28 have highest victimization rates or highest perpetration rates of folks across any other age demographic. We also look at connection to organizations. So the greatest predictor of violent crime is proximity to folks who hold vulnerabilities. Students who participate in organizations that have either social or a living environment component into that, either through examples are athletics, ROTC, IFC. Those spaces have higher risk factors because your connection with that group means that you're connected to other groups, which hold individuals who have high victimization vulnerabilities, right? So your group gives you collaborative buy-in from other groups and collaborative trust, which an individual may not have, and an individual may have built out camouflage so that their ill intent is hidden by the overall intent of the group, which gives them better access to folks. Also more prevalent rates of drug or alcohol use during sanctioned parties from, say, those 3 examples would be indicated populations.
Very interesting. Those that happen.
But I saw that your most expensive program for students is the gender violence prevention seminar. How much are you spending in total on those? Is that mainly just like food costs, like you were saying?
No, the gender-based violence prevention seminar is an academic class. We actually have a grant from the Big 12. So it's the Big 12's discrimination and violence prevention grant that we've been awarded. We're in our 4th year of that grant cycle, and that's $30,000 a year. 100% of the funding from that grant goes to paying instructors for this class. SAPEC receives no institutional revenue from this course, even though this course generates between $500,000 and $700,000 a year based on increased tuition rates to the institution. But we utilize that grant to pay our instructors between $300 and $600 per class, which is under the adjunct rate. $600 would be the adjunct rate, as $1,800 in the adjunct rate for per credit hour to teach. So we pay our instructors, which is unique. And that costs us, depending on enrollment, anywhere between $27,000 and $30,000 a year to completely fund that program.
Okay, got it.
I have one more and I think we can get out of here. Can you tell us a little bit more about your office relationship with Title IX coordinator, or do you all work with the Title IX office specifically?
We do. While we're prevention focused, then a lot of our pieces are not in that investigatory or that crisis response module. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't work with them. As we are adding that new position that we talked about, part of that addition of the new position is taking the weight of providing mandated reporting and response training to faculty and staff across campus, and is moving to SAPEC to take over that. So as we move forward with this new position, our increased role with Title IX will happen as we are picking up this piece of an educational model. Title IX hires folks who are experts in investigation, as they should. Hire someone that's their field of expertise. SAPEC is experts in prevention, education, curriculum development, and public speaking, which makes sense that we should have folks who are experts in the field do the work to provide the best possible service and experience for folks receiving that. So we're very excited for this partnership that we have with Title IX as they help us build out, make sure we're up to date on all language, policies, and procedures that are going to impact the way we talk to our students and to our faculty and staff members.
Do you take feedback on any of your services or programs?
Yes, we do. So we have 3 of our programs are IRB approved. Which is a research-based approval process, which includes feedback from students. And then we have assessment where we receive student feedback on all of our major programs that are not IRB approved and function. And so we use that data to inform how we move forward in the process. We made major changes to Flock this year, since the last in-person year was 2019, but we did make changes to it based on feedback we got from students on their check-in process. We've made changes to our gender-based violence prevention seminar for students based on their desire to do more small group work in the class, to have more hands-on learning activities as well. And so we definitely use that feedback.
Thank you. One last thing. Can you maybe speak a little bit to Senate's involvement in the prevention is possible study for those that aren't acquainted? If I recall correctly, a substantial portion of that funding came from Senate.
So originally it did. So we are at year 4 in this 5-year grant cycle. So the first year was the development of the tool. There is no tool that exists. We could not just take a verified research scale and plug and chug into KU because it didn't happen. So we had to create one from scratch. So first year was a tool development, which we hope to be able to provide to other institutions. Year 2 was our first, meant to be our first implementation year, and then COVID happened. So we were able to delay. So the first year we rolled out the process. We received support, financial support from students in it in the amount of $20,000 to be able to support a graduate research assistant in development of this tool, creating the data cleaning process, the data visualization process, the data metrics process for that. So we were to use that $20,000 to support the program. There's some changes that happened along the way where we reallocated funding where Student Senate's $20,000 went for funding for another staff member to allow us to move some money around. But in the end, $20,000 was spent directly for the PIP study, directly on a staff member working with the data processing and the tool development of this program. And that was a one-time financial commitment.
Any other questions?
Sure.
You guys have a carry forward?
We do. We have a carry forward. We have met our 90-day reserves, and I come from the world of nonprofits, which means my assumption is at any point in time, there's no money ever that's going to happen. And we still have to keep the lights on, the doors open, and provide services. So we have been very careful stewards of our carry forward, which has allowed us to weather things such as increased rates to provide services, increased funding costs, to add graduate students, to pay student staff and add those as needed. There's a time period that we were carrying as we were transitioning staff members, that we were carrying 2 staff members on the salary line that historically would have been set for 1 staff member. And so we've been able to do that from this careful stewardship, not only of our student Senate fee carry forward, but also of our other funding streams. As you can see that we have a fairly diversified funding portfolio as we are working to spread that out, not just for this, but for this funding cycle, but for future students moving forward.
Small clarification. I see that your answer for 7th question says you do not have a robust relationship with your student advisory board representative. Is that thing sorted out or like what? Is it like an isolated incident of regular?
It's the advisory board thing. That's a very long story that probably isn't necessarily germane to feed. We're working on that through Sadie. That's not something we need to worry about. Unless there's
No, we did meet. We had one meeting with the student that was volunteered to work with our office and met with them, and then that was the extent of our interaction with them, which is fine. Our process is fairly streamlined, and we have a ton of student engagement with other student advisory boards that hold our process and our program and evaluate everything that comes out of our office before it ever launches. And so we feel really comfortable that we have high student engagement and feedback, but we'd always love more from Student Senate when time and human power allows.
Yeah, I have one quick one. So just regarding the carry forward again, just so we're clear, you're gonna plan on, keeping it at a healthy balance just in case things happen and just for kind of rainy day funds, not even gonna be a balance this year.
We do, as laid out in the Q&A that was put before you. Part of our build out is during the time of COVID, our peer educators were reduced. Students were on campus, we were not in person. One of our commitments is that we pay our peer educators as well. So as the space that we're moving forward with our carry forward, as outlined in the document that I provided, is going to be to utilize that carry forward to be able to pay for peer educators in a more robust way. We have 1 this year, and then the goal next year is to move that up between 4 and 5 peer educators that will be working with us throughout the program. We also use some of that as our graduate students work the entire year over summer break and winter break too. So being able to pay them to carry them through both of those spaces, instead of just the 8 to 9 month commitment, is something we also do with carry forward.
So you said that last year, when student Senate funded you, it was well over like your asking price per fee. So what is your carry forward right now?
Do you have access to the fee
he
document?
does. It's 61,000.
Okay, it's kind of weird for me to see your.
The exact amount, I am not sure.
Yeah, it's
So according to the simulation file, which is all our projections, you all need to remember that's just a projection based on saying that each department is going to collect 100% of their funds and spend 100% of their budget. So based on this, at the end of this fiscal year, State Tech is projecting to have about $82,000 in carry forward. Now, with that being said, they have a 90-day reserve, which everybody has, that has to cover the run, like being able to run their department. If no money's coming in, it shuts down, it still has to be able to. But if you look at their simulation file, you will see that at the end of this year, they, based off of what they plan to collect and they spend, they will only have about $5,000 to carry forward to next year. By the end of next year, they will have $1,000. So from what they collect to what they budget, they will have $1,000 left. So by the last year on here, which I think is FY25, they will start going negative and start having to spend out that carry.
Our carry forward bounced to, we spent 2 years that we were not able to do Jayhawk Give a Flock in person. So that's a $15,000 non-cost expenditure in those years, which would equate for $30,000 of that inflated carry forward that you do see. Great questions.
awesome. Well, Jen, thank
Yeah,
you so much.
thank you so much.
She won't tell you this
That's
herself,
so
but she's known around these parts as a fundraising wizard and both,
Oh.
allocation and saving and finding money. Let's give her a round of applause. Yeah, thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate it. Yeah, should be. What's up, Tom? How's it going?
We have SUA next, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you all have a PowerPoint? Okay. To the SharePoint? Lovely. Madison, do you need any clarification with the simulation files? Okay. Give it a second to upload.
Yes. Okay, so this right here is the total amount, balance of the current report, total amount. The puberty requires that the each certain. Number is whole negative account less than the 90-day reserve requirement. This. Yeah, the 90-day reserve requirement. Yes, exactly. These are the renewal budget services for, so this right here, you're spending $150 more than they're getting.
But then they still have.
Projected, yes. Got it?
Yes.
Cool. Sorry.
You didn't.
Anybody else need clarification on simulation files? It's complicated. Please do not feel like, you should feel like a fish out of water at this point, because that's how we all were. I'm not seeing it. You uploaded it to this folder, the SUA and. Okay.
It might not have been over that one yet. Oh, yeah, I put it in, yeah, the library.
All right. Cool. You're good. Did your mom go to Augusta too, Sadie? Wow. Deep roots.
Yeah, not as deep as some. There's some like fourth generations and fifth generations out there. Only third.
It's not quite a family curse yet.
Yeah, not yet. That'll be if I get that. It's an opportunity.
Let me know what it said, Madison. You're good. Unfortunately, we don't have any microphones in this room, so we're going to do this the old-fashioned way and let our voices boom and echo. We have this thing where someone will email me the PowerPoint or whatever, and we'll wait like 2 minutes and the email doesn't come through in case he's like, okay, I'll just put it in the SharePoint. And every single time, like the email arrives just as she puts it in the SharePoint. It's like, it's kind of a running joke at this point. Okay, awesome. So just a heads up, the way this will work is that you will click on the mouse pad to advance the slides. You cannot go backwards within this window. If you want to go backwards, you have to press escape and then go back to this one. Okay, make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, click carefully.
I'm scared.
Okay.
Please welcome student union activities. We heard from Tom yesterday, right? Yesterday?
Monday.
Awesome, Monday. Tom's back, he's great, alongside all of his lovely coworkers. SUA, everybody.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, honorable guests, senators, and representatives. It is our pleasure to represent student union activities, SUA, to present our fee status and fee request for fiscal year 24. As an organization, student-led organization of 85 years of history, it is our great pleasure and responsibility to continue enhancing the Jayhawk spirit on campus. And my name is I am a senior majoring in business analytics and supply chain management. I am the current executive director of SUA, and this is my team.
My name is Faith Turner. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an art history major and I'm the current Kansas City Valley coordinator.
I'm Michaela Leader, she, her, hers, a mathematics major, and I'm the outgoing executive director, and I will kick us off today. So our biggest mission here at SUA is to provide diverse programming for the KU community through some low-cost entertainment and stress relief activities. kind of just working towards that Jayhawk experience that we're all here for, giving students what they ask for, and giving them just a great experience here to be at KU. We have a team of leaders and members who work on our events, and then some advisors as well with that. Each leader and member gets to work with some contracting, budgeting, risk management, marketing, basically anything that goes into event planning. They are hands-on with it, and they put a whole bunch of details into our events, and we appreciate them so much.
For fiscal year 2024, we are asking for a flat fee status of $6 to continue our business of making memories for all Jayhawks on campus. We have 3 pillars to tackle this upcoming fiscal year. First of all, being having an emphasis on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in compliance with the University of Kansas's statement. We would like to make sure that we are putting out events for all students on campus, regardless of their backgrounds. We cater for all communities and groups on campus, including underrepresented communities within the Lawrence campus at KU. We also want to invest in sustainable event planning, where we invest in recyclable, reusable, and long-term facilities, so we can make sure that we use it for generations going forward, and we don't have to buy one-time usage items anymore. We also have a ambition, we are already doing this, is to lease out and give these items and facilities and supplies to smaller student organizations who needs the financial leverage to start their organizations. We can better create a culture and network of event planning on campus, with FUA being the epicenter and giving out supplies, resources that support our students. We want to cultivate a professional, empowering, and engaging culture within our organization and outside of the organization. We want all of our leaders and members to be passionate in what they do and responsible with all of the events that they put on, so that we can serve the common cause of enhancing students on campus. We also want to empower students, including our leaders and members, with knowledge and expose them to professionals on campus from departments, and also real hands-on experience of putting on a large scale event for thousands of students, to make sure that they have the heads-up advantage to apply their knowledge in class into real life and have an advantage in terms of bolstering their careers prospect in the future.
Yes, so SUA really heavily contributes to that Jayhawk experience through a lot of our events. And some of those first experiences are orientation and Union Fest. So we are tabling at orientation. So all those folks coming to that and getting their first time here at KU sometimes are seeing us and interacting with us and getting to know what we do. And also Union Fest during Hawk Week, we are there. It is our event, so we are planning it. And so we host historically over 6,000 students at Union Fest here in the Union to provide different student groups for them to browse through. Being at their first time at KU, they probably don't know what all we have to offer, so they're browsing those student groups. They're getting a lot of free entertainment, free food, all the fun things. It's one of some of students' first favorite memories here on campus as well. And then next, every single week, we have at least 3 events for folks to attend, 2 of those being Tea at 3 and Brew for You. Those are events that have student-focused departments or organizations providing resources to students. Tea at 3 is at the Union, and then Brew for You is at the Burge at 2 different times, 2 different days of the week. So they really get to see different resources that are provided to them. They have different options to get involved on campus. And then they also get free catering at those events as well. And then our detailed programming previously was on Friday nights, and then last semester we switched to Thursday nights. With that switch, we did see over a 2,000 attendee increase in our numbers. And so we really think that transition was really helpful, and a lot of folks seem to come out more often on those Thursday nights. And over the past 3 years during COVID, we kind of saw some student housing groups being terminated and just kind of going down under. And so we really hope those programs are helping students who are here on campus after hours stay connected to the community and finding that alternative to a Thursday night as well. And then they also get at least 1 large event from student activities that ranges from live music to a spiriting event surrounding the Jayhawks. Annually, pre-pandemic wise, annually we had about 2 of these large events. We're just now getting back up to those numbers with our fee increase from last year and with our Kansas Drag Showcase as well. And then during finals week, they also get at least 1 stress relief activity from us. And that typically includes some take-home activities and some free food that they can also take home with them, just to kind of relieve that mental tension during finals week, as we don't program during that week, but we hope that the weekend before we do provide activities for them to kind of just relieve some stress going into that finals week. And then overall Jayhawk experience, so we had 444 respondents on our survey that we will get into. Those folks were asked, why do you attend SUA events? And 65% of them did rate to enhance their college experience in their top 3 responses. So I think it's really important that we do contribute to that Jayhawk experience here at KU, and a lot of students recognize us. They come to our events often, they know who we are. I think it's really important. My Jayhawk experience, I was in SUA my entire Jayhawk experience. I'm in that photo. I was on the executive team in 2019 when I first came to KU, and I've been with them ever since. I now have a job with the programs office through SUA, and so I think it's really important. Not all students get the same experience that I do. I think a lot of students also see SUA in different viewpoints with our leaders, members, and students who just attend events. I think everyone knows what SUA is, and they all get a different experience out of it as well.
All right, so last year we had over 35,000 interactions. With the introduction of the core cap in spring of last year, students were able to see ahead, see what events we're gonna host, where they're gonna be, what times, they can take the time out of their day to try to make our events. And with the core cap, our assessment coordinator is able to send emails directly out to them, send surveys to them, and through that, we received 444 survey responses. And as you can see, our attendance is slowly rising back up. We try to reach our presence of SUA throughout all populations of KU. We participated in the 3-minute thesis, which is for graduate students, and so prospective students can also see what research and studies graduate students do. We have our spirit committee, which is for the tailgates, our sports teams. So we have football, men and women's basketball, women's soccer, baseball, and softball. And we also have our Home Hoops Friday, which is at Allen Fieldhouse for our people, students camping at Allen Fieldhouse. We're also a sponsor of the Jayhawk International Festival. And one of the things that I enjoy is knowing that all of our hard work, all of our progress, it shows. You know, people come to us during the day, take the time to do homework, to not study, to relax, be stress-free, you know, have fun. Seeing both new and familiar faces realizes that our presence does reach out to almost all students here on campus. And it's nice to see those results are shown.
We do have an SUA assessment coordinator on our team who sends out surveys after every event, and then also at the end of the semester just to gain some general feedback about our events, just so we can make it better and provide students what they're asking for. So again, those 444 respondents were asked, why do you attend SUA events? And these are percentages of their top response. And so 30% of them and their top response said to meet new people. And I think that's really important. In classrooms, you're seeing people with the same major and minor as you most typically. And so if I go to an event, I'm not going to see Ton. He's a business analytics. I'm in mathematics. We're in 2 separate buildings. And so I think it's really important our events bring folks together, and you're not going to see those folks in your classroom. And so we're making connections all throughout campus. 26% of them said free food. So again, most of our events have that free catering aspect to fight those food insecurities that we know here on campus. It's sometimes prepackaged, and then it's also sometimes just grab and go. And so it also allows them to take it home afterwards as well to have later on in the week. And then again, that to enhance college experiences on there as well. And then they were also asked to rate their satisfaction rate with SUA events compared to other campus events, and that satisfaction rate is 80% of those respondents. So again, our leaders and members put in great detail to all of our events. They go through the viewpoint of a student at their event to make sure all of the needs are being hit, all the accessibility issues are being hit. They truly put in a whole bunch of work and time into these events to make sure folks are satisfied. And then also on the handout that we gave you are some more feedback as well, if you want to look through it. We have about a 90% connection rate to campus. Folks feel 90% more connected to campus through our events as well.
In order to put on 150 events last year and also touch 36,000 interactions throughout all of our events, it is very important for us to understand the population and the demographics that comes to our event, so we can identify any patterns of students, how we're doing well with students, that we are serving them well, and we are putting 12 good qualities event for each different communities and groups on campus. We put special emphasis on 2 populations, being international students and also graduate students, to make sure that we communicate and we help them overcome the challenges that they normally have, including language barriers, culture shocks, and also graduate students have a lot of other commitments, and they usually they don't have a lot of free time as undergraduate students. So we sit down and talk with graduate studies, international support services, study abroad, and also other departments to make sure that we understand the population well. We put out events that specifically cater for those groups and with their special needs. One of the proud things that we have in the last year is that 7% of students coming to SUA events are international students. This is approximately similar to the 7.2% population of international students on the Lawrence campus, campus-wide, provided by AIR. So we are proud that we are reaching really close to that proportion, and we are continuing to make sure that we keep this consistency and make sure that we put the words out for international students even more through International Jayhawk Festival, through other departments, and also events that we put on for students. We also see that 5% of students coming to our events were graduate students. This is a great sign as we have been climbing in that proportion, and we do have a plan to continue this achievement to make sure that we push our events to locations where graduate students are heavily located, including Great Little Hall, the Birch Union, the Central District, with our Brew for You events and other events that is tailored for graduate students, and including 3-minute thesis, graduate students networking, where we can make sure that students are also a part of SUA in planning and participating and feel welcome on campus as a part of their child's experience. In fiscal year 2022, we have spent in total $262,000 in events to make sure that we are catering toward 36,000 interactions of Jayhawks on campus. 3/4 of this is for event needs. That includes a lot of the investment in reusable and recyclable event supply and facilities that we use for different events, and also in the future, we plan to lease them out to student organizations that need support and resources to leverage their very start of their events for different groups of students. We also spend those on to catering and prepackaged foods. We have grocery bingos 3 times every semester on Daisy Hill for students who have food insecurity. We also make sure that we put out free cookies and teas and pastries every week. We have catering, we have different sorts of food for students, prepackaged and also catered food, so that we can make sure that students are well fed physically and they have the ability to continue their education. We also give out supplies, including planners with coloring pages, so they can organize their academics and also be relaxed without that academic tension. And other things include keychains, so they can have their Jayhawk pride. It is very important for us to make sure that we are catering for students both physically and mentally, so they can complete their education, because we are in business of making memories, making sure that students can have their learning process.
With that, we wanted to provide a budget breakdown of one of our largest events that we provide, just to kind of show what a lot of what the money goes into. So this is a breakdown of our Kansas Drag Showcase from spring of 2022. You can see different categories, with the biggest one being talent fees and rentals. That includes payment for performers, any production needs with lights, sound, a stage, the fancy little lights behind them, all of that fun stuff, security on site. And then we also had a union rental as we were after hours and had paid for that staff to be here as well. Our next biggest category is advertising. That included poster printing, online ads, stickers, magnets, photo backdrops, pretty much anything with our logo on it. We paid for it to promote the event on campus. Then we also have event supplies, which included decorations. We had some lanyards for our event volunteers. It also includes tape, paper, all of the generic event supplies as well. And then we have a little sliver of hospitality that included catering for volunteers, as they were there for more than 6 hours that day putting on this event. And then also we did some goodie bags for our performers, just as like a thank you for showing up and being here. A total of that spent being a little over $27,000 with about 553 attendees. That makes it a little close to a $50 cost per person. It may look extensive, but we did purchase some reusable items that we hope to use in the future drag showcases to bring down that cost. But we can't really project the decrease in spending just because inflation, we all know, is happening. We're really not sure where prices are going to be for performers and all of the decorations and all that fun stuff. And with Kansas Drag Showcase, we wanted to provide a breakdown of what Jazz House has to offer compared to our Kansas Drag Showcase. So for folks who don't know, Jazz House is a local bar downtown on Mass Street that provides a drag show every single week. So at Jazz House, they have a $7 cover, and it is restricted to 21 and up. It is a bar, so obviously alcohol is pretty much included in that. They have about 8 performers for each show, and then there's no security on site. Obviously, police are roaming that street, but nobody is on site waiting if something was to happen. Compared to our Kansas Drag Showcase, we don't have a cover. We have general admission paying about $6, but it really doesn't hit very many folks. We really cater to students, staff, and faculty. So that kind of just on the side. We don't restrict the age at all, so anyone can come if they are able to. We have no alcohol. We're a dry campus, so no alcohol is involved. We have about 14 performers, with 4 of those being KU students who want to get experience in drag. We have security on site, and then we provide that safe, secure environment with being on campus, buses running after hours so folks can get back home safely. And then we include some educational aspects with the center before and during the event about drag and the LGBTQ community.
So for $6 a semester, students are able to continue to have our weekly events, including Brew for You and TF3, and one large event, which we include a supported picture, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and over 150 events. All that is just a package deal for $6 a semester, in comparison to just 1 coffee, 1 large tea, and 1 ticket at Theater Lawrence, which is located on West Lawrence, is about 20 minutes away to begin with. So not only could it cause financial issues, and also transportation, stress, time, security, and other issues that we try to alleviate by being on campus, by being accessible, and by being able to reach any and all students on campus.
So in summary, Student Youth Activities is asking for a flat fee status of $6 for fiscal year 2024. This is going to activate our ability to continue to provide quality events for students on campus. We would like to continue going past that $36,000, 36,000 interactions, and we would like to put on more students, events for students on campus to make sure that everyone has a touch on each experience and get their college experience enhanced. We have been partnering with different departments of campus, including KU Athletics, to put on spirits and tailgates events for students, including interactive students, to get a gist of the US and also sports and how the Jayhawk spirit is going to be embraced by different types of students. We also talk with ETC, SAPEC, STD, and other organizations to make sure that we are well educated in different causes, to make sure that we are thoughtful in the events that we put on for students. We also would like to continue our ability to expose 15 to 20 leaders every year to opportunities that they could never get in classes by doing contracts, talking big budget, doing allocation, and being thoughtful for an organization that were established by students and for students. Over 80% of our attendance have been satisfied with our events, and we do see a tendency for that number to go up in the future as we are more thoughtful and we have the more resources to put on such events after the pandemic. 90% of students said that they are more connected with campus through SUA, and we do see that through researchers and studies, connectedness on campus can significantly bolster retention rate and graduation rate in tertiary institutions. So again, we are Student Youth Activities in the business of making memories, and we are here to make learning possible for everyone on campus. Thank you so much for listening, and we are open to any questions.
Questions? Philip Hara.
Very good presentation. I like what you're doing. And the cork slide that you have put, I did not see it before for any other presentations. So this is more like a positive request. Please don't take it in a negative sense. I see that the seniors, juniors, and grad students percentages are really low. Have you had any special interest in providing non-academic activities? Like 3 minutes is just academic, but out of your 150 activities, like how many of them are actually focused on increasing senior involvement or grad student involvement, and how many of them happen in West Campus?
Gotcha. Thank you so much for that question. So the majority of our events are usually more recreational and relaxing for students. 3-minute thesis is a very rare occasion where we have kind of like an academic part of it. But we do see that our population is heavily dominated by freshmen and sophomore because we do have a series dedicated to Daisy Hill. So for dorm students, a lot of them are freshmen and sophomore. So that could be a reason why that population kind of like is more predominant in the high. But we do see that junior and seniors usually have more commitments, including graduate students. They usually don't travel on campus much, don't have free time, they are doing their capstone. So it's a little bit hard for them to stop and slow down and do events for students. So that is what we are also trying to talk with graduate studies to have more insight into those groups, to make sure that we sometimes have different events that is catered specifically for those groups. So we don't really sophomore and freshmen have their own events. So it is now time for juniors, seniors, and graduate students to have their own run now. So that is, and we really appreciate that.
And any of them happen on West Campus?
On the West Campus. So we do not see ourselves currently doing any events across from the bridge from Daisy Hill currently, because they are usually heavily populated by laboratories and other like facilities that we don't really haven't been familiar with, but we have been investing heavily in the central district to make sure that we move away not just from the Kansas Union, but also Coach Union and other areas.
What's up?
What was your funding in 2019?
Would have been a 525.
This simulation file, by the way, is really weird. This is the pass-through account, correct, Casey?
Yes.
They also received a $50,000 check from the Student Engagement Center, and was that 2020, Casey? I don't know if that's from the simulation file, but
We got the $80,000
yeah.
from the fund around 2020, this fiscal year 2022, and that was in partnership for the Welcome Back Badge. Which is for slash other partnership funds that we use. That was that extra $80,000 that was spent in fiscal year 2020.
Yep.
Why it shows that we spent $80,000.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, so.
So that's not money that we would typically transfer to them, they deposit directly themselves.
Yeah, that was a rare.
In their
One time.
What other questions? What's up? Yeah, anyone jumps in, everybody gets one at a time.
So I see your touch point, little table on the question sheet. Are those unique individual student interactions, or are they just like students getting counted over again based off your programs?
So that is the second option that you said. So that is like unique students, but it's more like a combined students over time.
Do you have any idea in terms of outreach that you're getting as a percentage of the student population? Like how many students you're engaging, like a rough estimate?
So that is a very good question. We do not have that exact number because through our demographics, we only got 3,600 core check in. So that gives us a lot of information of students, but that is still 10% of our population. But we do see a pattern of students picking up Org app more because they are interested in seeing events on campus more. A lot of the obstacles coming from students who have not heard about Org app, they don't want to download another app on their phone. But we do see freshmen coming in the next few years, picking that up very quickly. And in the next few years, we do see that percentage of core check-ins going on. So we will be able to have more data in our students.
And then you said that you guys are required to spend your budget by the end of the year. Like when you're, let's say, midway through spring, how much of the budget do you guys typically have? And is it more of a situation where you're grabbing the cash, or is it more like, what do we do with all this money?
So usually we allocate our budget in a 60-40, sometimes 55-65 proportion. For fall, we spend more money on fall because it is a greater experience for students. And it is also when we have a youth fest and a few more concerts for students. Spring is a little bit slower, smaller budget, but usually we don't see that we have a lot of problems with running around with cash or the budget. Like, was that your part of the question?
Like, and
Oh.
so you don't have any problems with.
Yeah, I can, yeah. We fully allocate the budget for our budget committee to the different event committees that we have, so we don't have like a leftover at the end. It's just if folks haven't spent their money, that's when we have leftover. So we don't project any leftover, but if it's like $100 because they didn't spend this much on catering, then we just put it towards a different event. So we reevaluate budget kind of monthly and see where we are, and then add that budget to different events for the next month. if that makes more sense.
Gotcha. Do you feel like towards the end of the year that your budget might be oversaturated at times?
Oversaturated.
I think I got the answer that I need.
Oh, okay.
So, anyone else?
It's really beautiful. And please come to West Campus. We have outdoor spaces, indoor spaces. You can do like a lot of things, and I guarantee nothing will be left by the end of the year.
Nichols Hall is a weird building.
Equals has like lot of space if you want to conduct any sort of indoors or outdoors games, anything. And even the School of Pharmacy is there. We have like very big buildings full of students. And this is really good. I hope like other people can present something like this. Very inside.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Essie. Right. Thank you, Tom. No, Casey, the reason I asked about the SEC grant was I didn't have the simulation file in front of me. I don't know if it showed the jump in revenue or is it? I figure that's probably confusing as hell for someone who hasn't familiarized themselves with it.
Did we ever figure out where that extra 69,000 funding is coming from in block allocation yesterday?
What?
I think is it for Center for Sexuality?
Yeah, SGD. We did not. That's
Could you allocate their expenses to 9,000 SGD?
So I'm confused about that. I was at block of that for year, and I don't even remember it, so that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. But it would have been allocated through block and presented in the spring of 2021. 2021, spring 2021. It would be the spring 2021, so that'd be 2 years ago, and that block would have been allocated, and it would have been in block, and it would have been presented to block resolution to Senate. But
But that block allocation.
yeah, because it would be made in FY21 for coverage. And so I think all that, I didn't understand the finances split up, so maybe now that was my sophomore year, so I was assistant treasurer.
I thought I was taking crazy pills yesterday.
No, I was trying to be honest because we didn't talk about that last year, because I thought last year we gave an outright.
No, it was totally an increase. SGD.
No, so SBD, the first year, this year, right now that we're in, is the first year SBD has fully been on required campus fees with their full block allocation. So the year prior, we go back 2 years, they were on block. It was voted then, they would move to required campus fees partially for 1 year. So part of their money was on 758 funds, part of their money was now on required campus fees for 1 year. Then this fiscal year, the first year, their full block allocation is on required campus fees. So they did not receive an increase. It's just moving them from block to required campus fees. What we're saying is we think that last year, none of them understood that. That's what we're talking about. I think
No, like this was not mentioned once. It was an outright increase
No,
last year during the fee. Yeah,
That's true. But I think outright increase.
that's what was discussed last year. I sat in this very room and had that discussion.
But I think you were just like, SUD has never received an increase period. So they're at the same level, they are the same level of funding as what they were on block. It's true, from block, they're right in the seat. It looks like an increase, but it's because it's building year 2. So in FY21, they were 100% on block. The agreement was to move them from block to required campus fees gradually. The first year being FY22 would be partial block, partial campus fees. And this would be the first year fully funded on required campus fee at their block rate. So they never received an increase. It's just moving from block. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, I just don't want you guys to think that they've ever received an increase. They've never received an increase. It was just a gradual transition.
We know that now. Wonderful. Okay, Caps, which presentation would you like us to pull up?
I am actually not Caps, I'm Burgash.
Okay,
Caps should be here any minute.
wonderful.
They're starting at
4:15.
Oh, we're on break then.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, we have 15 minutes to go to the restroom. The schedule that I have must be inaccurate. It's all good.
Yeah, that's the only change. Everything else will stay at the exact time. I think they'll go into
For those of us on the live stream, we're going into a short recess. We'll be back in the cut at 4:15.
And then so based on the part of these recommendations, that was in the paper. And then say that was right. Yeah. And then we also do upgrades. They go on money. Like I'm not saying. Or not like.
I do not find it.
No, you're good, yeah. That's my understanding, but I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Yeah, just make sure the students in it,
Yeah.
yeah.
I got you.
You only invite
Yeah.
back readers.
Yeah, easy. Sorry, I didn't think you'd be like, oh, you know, I mean, like, I just like did not get that. Like, I don't know what my grade is doing last year, but I was just like. Well, we're on the right here. No, we're fine. That makes sense. I think the proposal is that that's, like, anybody may have understood that and then said like. Probably, you know, it's just not normal, like, it's not. Normally, true, but it was an agreement in 21 for 22. Trying to move them to the opposite block. Oh, yeah, but right, I mean, those are very. And we were done with it over, it's like, the really weird. So the remainder of it, was only on blocks, it was out of 795. Oh, yes, you're right. I was looking at the PowerPoint, that if they're not gonna have any more than 5 days, we're monthly rent. Okay, that makes sense. Cool, yeah, it was like a one time, it was a little like, we'll do this, and then. That, and I can remember what I allocated for that. Is that like a reserve? It did come out. Okay, that makes sense, yeah. So it was similar to and then, you know, they have, oh, that makes sense, yeah.
Thank you. I just have to be somewhere that's. If that doesn't work.
Looks cool. It's like they're gonna-
Like, I don't know, but now, you, you're.
But they said.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't really hurt. Well, it's, so.
No, we don't need a. There's two students in there. Okay. Yeah. So it's part of the. This small group. Yeah. Me, Megan. You.
No. Yeah. The only thing that's well, not compared to the other. I do think yeah, but you need to go through review, because I mean, I never mind to see something. I think the translate's asking for like. We have 14. I guess we're also still waiting to see.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Alright, we'll see this. Right, I saw some. I'll see you guys. I got a couple long here. I'm gonna go back to the. Did you hear like that's why I have it up my hair? Yeah, and I have to. I got my attention. They really. Yeah, everything was. I guess. Yeah, that's weird. Well, maybe yeah, like
Yes, you.
yeah, not about those are always tough, but I kind of want to try and. I wish I had. I was telling you, it's holiday on those. It's not like sure how it's waiting. Over time, like the story in the UK. I wouldn't do that for the Halloween session at least, but we just get the least of things. Go to allocate for that. My student senate office. Another time. Dude, apparently some dude went on Jayhawk. It might be a guy that I think my girlfriend's really knows. So her dad used to be like a tax guy. He's like a tax guy, and he works for. He was one of his clients was pursuing against the area who just had like a huge car, like massive, huge head of cars, lots of spectators. So I wonder if he went on Jayhawk the show. It was some random. Like some dude that like compares. Yeah, no, yeah, apparently it's just had a shed. Yeah, J-Lo might be expensive. I don't know if we can get it. It can be. I don't know if this is your, but pretty sweet.
Although.
Well, I'm just like, it's just gonna be this weekend. I don't know what happens.
Yeah, no, I think not looking at a lot of like activities. And we get like $5. That's you, right? Yeah. Based off of just inflation, they should only be at like 5-ish funding, and also like route of checker. But saying 30,000. A lot of the reason I got that increase last year was because they had 80,000 the year before, and it would have been such a drastic drop off in service between the two. Yeah.
Like,
What?
you can use that. It's like,
What? No, they were actually on top of it. I don't get out. It's very much like the freshman sophomore. It's all good. Maybe that's one. Yeah. Thing, so it's like, it's all good. Yeah. But how's your show? You have your show. That's out there. I think it's.
Good express where because I like say something, I'll be like, I don't know.
I did. Look.
Bad negative reviews. That's surprising.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But it's always fun to see like teachers and you're like looks down. Wow. Break. Break. Did it really be cancer for those?
It was really cool that there was.
Having done a bit like that.
You see the British people, is that like how you're seeing it? Yeah, but he's like a chip. If I had none of these sauces. Yeah, I can scroll back. How are you? Super. Great. I've been here like out on the edge. Yeah, how's it going? Hanging in there? One of them was reaching out. Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. I know a lot of. Yeah.
It's mine that's just student senate BNC.
BNC, wonderful, we do that.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back, everybody. The presentations we're doing today are for this next session. You might have noticed we have a little bit more time reserved. It's because both wings, I should say, of our student psychology apparatus are presenting today. First is Burt Nash Center, which Casey confirmed this is another pass-through account, correct?
Burt Nash is, it gets deposited in with caps. And then we issue Burt Nash a check quarterly.
Wonderful. So it's a partnership with an off-campus facility that we engage with alongside CAPS.
Yeah, and we have a memorandum of agreement.
Okay.
The two parties together.
Wonderful. I'm not a lawyer. I have no idea what that means, but.
They agreed to criteria that govern the distribution of money.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'll leave the rest to Kirsten, correct?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. And then with the slideshow, just a heads up. We're in this window right here. If you click on the trackpad, this is how you go forward and back.
Okay.
You can't go backwards. So
Okay.
click
Okay.
carefully. If you do, you have to press escape and then
Okay.
scroll back to the slide you want to go to.
Okay.
Wonderful.
I do have some handouts too.
So good. Oh, wonderful. I can-
Hey, Andrew, make sure you start at pause.
Oh, shoot. Fine. There we go. we know why this is happening? Okay. You're good to go now.
Thank you. Okay, hi, my name is Kirsten Watkins. I am a clinical psychologist and I am also the director of adult services at Burt Nash Community Mental Health Center. We just recently celebrated our 70th anniversary, so with our little snazzy logo. I, by the way, just presented a presentation to give a little bit of information about how we provide services for KU students and coordinate with CAPS, and also just a little bit of information about who we are as an agency and what kinds of things we offer for KU students and also for the community at large. And also a lot of that stuff is on the paper that's in front of you. So just in case you're wanting that detail. So just so in case you know, the Burt Nash Center was founded in 1950 in honor of Dr. Burt Nash, who actually was a KU educational psychologist and community leader. Today, we are a licensed comprehensive mental health facility. We actually, in the last year, were certified with these 2 national certifications, CARF, and as a certified community behavioral health clinic, a CCBHC. Those are huge, huge deals. The CCBHC one in particular is, again, a national licensure. We are the first state in the country that is a non-universal Medicare state to be able to achieve this licensure. So it's a big deal for us, and it provides us with an opportunity to provide a broader range of resources in the community. You may or may not know this, but Burt Nash has over 300 employees. We actually, as maybe you'll see as I go forward, the demand has been so extraordinary since COVID that we've hired 100 people in the last year. Not all of those are therapists, but 100 providers across our agency in the last year. So we really have been growing significantly. We have all the providers that you would expect in the mental health center. We have psychiatrists, psychiatric nurse practitioners, psychologists, social workers, nurses, peer support specialists, therapists, educators, case managers, behavioral health specialists, all the things necessary to provide really comprehensive care for people. We primarily serve those in Douglas County and also in the cities of obviously Lawrence, Baldwin, and Eudora. Sliding scale fees are available for Douglas County residents, including students. And we also have providers that are credentialed in all of the major managed care organizations. We utilize 2 office buildings. We're big enough now that we have 2 office buildings right across from LNH on Main Street to provide all the services. And we're looking to expand even larger than that. All the services that we offer, here's just a pretty extensive list of all the things that students could access if they were to come to Burt Nash to utilize mental health services there. I'll talk some specifically in a second about some of the programs, but as you might imagine, individual therapy, group therapy, family therapy, couples therapy. We have a number of school-based services for students in the community. Psychiatric medication services, which is a really big deal. It's quite hard to find a prescriber these days in the community for psychiatric meds, and we have a number of those providers at Burt Nash. Also urgent care crisis services, housing resources, forensic services for people who are in the criminal justice system, in all sorts of different ways. So here's just a brief overview of all of the different programs that we have. Not all of these are relevant for KU students, so I'll just prioritize the ones that are. On the top left over here, adult services. We have an adult outpatient team that provides outpatient individual therapy and group therapy and couples therapy. We have a DBT program. That's an evidence-based program for people that have high-risk behaviors, have self-harm issues, have difficulty with distress tolerance, of managing distress of life. It's a really incredible program that many KU students have utilized. We also have an intensive outpatient program. So this is a step down from hospitalization. If someone is really at risk and needs something more than just outpatient therapy, but not quite to the level of needing to be hospitalized, intensive outpatient services are something that we offer at Burt Nash, and a lot of students have taken advantage of. The mobile response team is a fairly new thing in the last year. You may or may not know this, but if someone is in a crisis in the community, previously, our only option was to send out police officers to go help that person and get them to the hospital. Now we have mental health providers that are part of our mobile response team and coordinate with KU in order to go out to people's places where they're living and address the crisis and potentially help them get to the hospital. Crisis stabilization services, we have a number of staff who are available on call for crisis services and walk-ins. I mentioned forensic services again, and we also have psychological testing, another thing that's hard to find in the community, and we do have options for that for KU students. Let's see, the bottom right, medical services, that's probably the other major thing accessed by KU students. So again, I mentioned psychiatric providers, those that provide medications. We also recently trained our providers in what's called medication assisted therapy, which means there are medications that can be used to help people get off certain substances, alcohol and opioids. And so we have providers who are trained to use medications to help people get off those substances. KU students at Burt Nash, so we have a really valuable partnership with Burt Nash. I'm not exactly sure how long that's been going on, but prior to me, but it's been a really wonderful partnership to receive referrals from CAPS and from other agencies at KU. One of the, I think the primary benefits of being able to utilize Burt Nash's services for KU students is when there are services that maybe reach a level of risk or a breadth of services that are needed. If students are able to access Burt Nash services, they can stay in the community to receive those services while remaining in school and continuing their education. Students can use their health insurance, whether in or out of network, and have access to our sliding scale fee. So it's a really reasonable and accessible option. So a little bit of the statistics, again, these are on the information that I shared with you, but in this last year, the data that I was able to pull was that Burt Nash provided 2,286 services to roughly 193 KU students, which were specifically identified as referred by CAPS, the KU Psychological Services Clinic, Watkins Health Services, faculty, staff, parents, or self-referrals. One of the things I just want to note about this is there are many students that come to Burt Nash that may not self-identify as being a KU student. Also, particularly when people are in a crisis, there are many things that they're wanting and needing in that crisis moment, and identifying as a KU student is not typically at the top of that list. So I am very certain that the numbers that I have here are underestimates of the number of KU students that we actually serve, but these are the ones we know. Also, one other thing is that there are lots of students that might be taking a break from school because of mental health issues, so they may not be actively a student, but are planning to go back. Or students who are taking breaks for any particular reason. Students have access to all of our services that are available. Most of the most frequent ones are the adult outpatient services, medical services, and the intensive outpatient services. There were 60 initial assessments from the data that I could draw, about 1,050 individual therapy appointments that were offered in that calendar year, and 402 psychiatry appointments. A little more data, about 124 of the 193 students received medication management services. Again, I think that's a reflection of the scarcity of psychiatric providers in the community. So we're able to serve that need for a lot of students. 65% of the students we served identified as female, 34% identified as male, and 2% identified as transgender. Of all the students that presented that we could count, about 28% of them identified racially as non-white. Interesting about age ranges, about 15% of them were over the age of 30. The highest number of students were ages 21 to 23, which made up just under 50% of the students that we served. The most prevalent diagnosis was major depressive disorder amongst those people. Also many other diagnoses, and I put some percentages, just I think it's kind of interesting to see how that plays out. Generalized anxiety disorder, the second most, bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and schizophrenia and related disorders. So this last one, of the 2,286 services that were provided for KU students in that time period, there were a total of 2,008 hours of interventions provided. So a lot of time. I did want to just give you a little bit of the context of what we're dealing with as a community mental health center, some of the challenges we've faced in 2022. As you, I'm sure, know, unprecedented demand for mental health services. It started pre-pandemic, honestly, where we were seeing some trends there. During the pandemic, that really exploded in terms of need. I think maybe most of us providers expected at some point that we would kind of see a curve in that demand, and we have not been seeing that at Burt Nash. The demand has remained at a really high and unprecedented level for the last couple years. Another noteworthy trend that we're seeing is increases in intensity and acuity of needs of those that seek services. So what that means essentially is people who just have more severe needs and require more breadth of treatment in order to address the needs that they're presenting with. What this translates to is larger caseloads for staff. That's why we're trying to hire as many people as we possibly can. It does mean that there's wait times for certain services when there's so many people demanding those services. There's also, our community mental health center, so problems with the community impact us as well. So housing problems in the community, we're seeing a lot of challenges related to that. Also hospitalization, as you may or may not know, we're working on developing a treatment and recovery center that hopefully should be open any day. But currently we don't have any space in Lawrence for people who need hospitalization for mental health reasons. People go to the ER and wait for a bed to open up in Topeka and Kansas City. So we really need that, and we're right on the cusp of being able to provide that here in our community. One other thing that may or may not mean anything to you, it seems small, but it actually is quite big, is we have a terrible electronic health record. We are in the process currently of updating it. And I also think that has contributed to the numbers I've shown you, because I'm only able to pull numbers from certain parts of the electronic health record right now. But hopefully that will be a huge benefit for us going forward. Plans for this next year, ongoing work to reduce wait times for services and to provide care on demand. We've revamped our whole intake system to be able to assess people's needs much more quickly and refer them to services much more quickly. We've increased the number of staff in general and also increased the training for those staff. We're wanting these staff to be able to provide the highest level treatment possible and to be trained in treatments that are evidence-based, so they're shown to be effective. We're also hiring more prescribing providers. These are the people that are able to provide those psychiatric medications and training those providers in medical interventions for alcohol use disorder and opioid use disorder, which I mentioned. We're obviously continuing to work with community partners and trying to really just build better connections across the community for referrals and coordination on anything that someone might need. And then the last one is the opening of the treatment and recovery center, which we're hoping will be open any day to provide some of those services for acute needs. Okay, that's kind of who we are. That's how KU students integrate with the services that we offer. Any questions that you might have or anything I can help with?
What's your fee ask?
I don't know. I haven't been authorized to ask anything related to fees in particular. My job was to present on what we serve.
Okay. Is there fee included in caps basic?
It's not embedded within, so I think it's what, $1.60. I think the thought was $1.60, so then it was full flat.
Fixed it. Okay. Any other questions? I can go first for your the TRC that you're proposing.
Yeah.
I missed that. Is that an inpatient center?
Yeah, so it's not open yet. It's a combination with LMH and with the county. So we're waiting on coordination with the county to open that. What it would be a place where people can have short-term hospitalization for mental health needs, also a place for people to detox safely and appropriately from substances. So it's a very, very big deal.
And that will be the only one in Douglas County, correct?
Yes, yes,
Awesome. What else?
Is camps different from Burt Nash?
yes.
Yes, they are. Can you maybe go into detail on the relationship between the two?
CAPS is the mental health services that are offered on site at KU. Burt Nash is the community mental health center who serves the entire community and also serves KU students.
What percentage of your revenue comes from the?
Not very much. I don't know exactly about our entire budget. Our budget is, I think, last I saw was in the 20 million, and I think we got 70,000 from KU last year.
Very, very small, but Jenny, could you perhaps go into a little bit more detail on the agreement between Burt Nash and University of Kansas? Because my understanding is that KU students receive discounts on service.
So that is a piece that's being honored with that memorandum of agreement. Is not all KU students would be considered Douglas County residents, but Burt Nash is through this agreement treating all KU students as Douglas County residents, which affects your ability to access. So someone who lives in a different county, right, cannot necessarily access for now.
Yes, they would not have access to our sliding scale fees. So part of that agreement is to allow all KU students to have access to that sliding scale. So for instance, let's see, I have it written down. So in community behavioral health centers, a typical charge for an individual therapy appointment, a 60-minute individual therapy appointment is $195. With the sliding scale fee, when we look at students, that typically goes down to $15 per session. That is the student's responsibility. That goes for intake, individual therapy, group therapy is typically around $5 per session. Medication appointments are usually $15 as well.
How does that help?
Yes.
So we compose a a tiny fraction of Burt Nash's total revenue, but we have an agreement with them to make care more accessible to KU students. That would not otherwise be able to be served by CAPS.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that's an important
Uh-huh.
distinction is some of the students, some students might find their way to Burt National. Yes, so students who are typically referred from Watkins or from the CAPS, it's because the needs of the presenting issues are above and beyond what CAPS can respond to and still maintain access for a wide students. Right, that's that correct.
What other questions do we have, Kirsten? All right.
How does your feedback look like other students like telling you, like, do they feel good?
Yeah, yes, we do all kinds of, have opportunities for feedback, and we consistently get good feedback about the kinds of services that people receive and the breadth of services, frankly, the ability to access all of those things within one setting.
Anything else? That's all we have for you today. Thank
Okay,
you so much.
great.
Appreciate it. Next up, we have CAPS, which is our in-house psychology.
The very top. Here you go.
Wonderful. So when this presentation works, we'll just put it on the trackpad here, 2 minute slides. Reminded that once you switch your response, you can't go back. So
Okay.
if you want to go back to the slide, you have to escape and scroll up with something about SharePoint on the station. That was the way.
We'll see how I do.
No pressure.
I'll stand right up here. So I'm supporting. It's like my emotional support. That's me.
Try to get the SharePoint or the
Yeah, that's exactly.
screen share.
But I just want the room to also know it's okay to direct questions to me if they're more historical.
Jen is here to help. This isn't working. Just gonna go ahead. Okay. Finally. That sounds like it's trying to take off. So sorry, guys.
There you go.
Right. Well, good afternoon. My name is Lori Wesley. I'm a psychologist and I'm here to represent CAPS. I was hired about a year and a half ago as a clinical director here at KU, and this past summer I became the interim director. Because budgets are very new to me, that's why Jennifer is here, and also Casey may help answer some questions. So you have my emotional support, which is nice to have. What I'm going to talk to you about today is introduce you to CAPS and the services we offer, tell you what we've been doing and how we've been doing, tell you where we're heading, and then talk about what our current need is. Our goal at CAPS, I think, is pretty straightforward. We're here to help KU students be successful, both personally and academically. And so how we do that is a couple of different ways. One is through our clinical services. So we offer individual therapy, we offer urgent care services. So if a student comes to our office or calls us and says, I really need to be seen today, we work them in and we see them. This is an area that I think University Counseling Centers really shine, as well as our Nash Partners Community Mental Health Centers, because those are the only two places I know that you can walk in and say, I need to be seen short of a hospital and get seen. They have a bit of a wait, but you can get seen. Doesn't happen if you're seeing a private practitioner in the community. Group therapy is something we also offer. This is a very powerful modality of treatment, especially for traditional age college students. Developmentally, what traditional age college students are working on are intimacy and relationship needs usually, and the group therapy is a great place where you can work on those issues, have them play out in real time, and talk about them in a way that we don't talk about them out in the real world. So it's very powerful. We also offer psychiatric evaluations and psychiatric follow-up services, and as Dr. Watkins said, that's really hard to find right now too. Outreach services is kind of our preventative arm. And so we know that if we can prevent things and give skills so that things don't become issues, or we keep them smaller, that's really important. We do this in a number of ways at CAPS. We provide skill building workshops. We have our Hope at CAPS peer listening hours. Our peers are trained peer educators and they're certified. And we also provide presentations on mental health topics and consultation to the campus community on mental health topics. Other services that are housed within CAPS, we have the testing services. They administer and proctor exams. So if students need to take national exams like a GRE or get certified for teaching, those kind of things. They also scan and score exams for departments and professors. So if you've ever filled out little bubble sheets and wondered how those get scored, they get scored through the testing service. We also have the Care Advocate housed within our umbrella, and they offer free confidential support to students who experience interpersonal violence and harm. So who are we? I've heard sometimes that students think that CAPS doesn't have real therapists. I don't really know what that means, but we all are licensed and provide diagnosis and treatment. We do have 2 board certified psychiatrists, 6 licensed clinical social workers, 6 licensed psychologists. Our director position is open. We also provide training, which I think fits very nicely within a university mission to help train future therapists. But also our trainees provide a lot of services to KU students. We have 3 doctoral psychology interns. We have an accredited internship program with the American Psychological Association. So each year we get 3 interns who come from different universities across the US. It's a computer match system, and they're with us for kind of an intense year of training. It's their last year in their doctoral program on their way to becoming psychologists. And then we also have 3 doctoral psychology practicum students. Currently they come from KU, and we also have some folks from Washburn. And they're with us. This is prior to their internship year, so they're getting training along the way. It's really a profession where we learn by doing. So this is an important part of the training. We have 2 administrative associates. We have a director for testing services, the care coordinator. And in the fall, we had 10 Hope at CAPS peer educators. Unfortunately, 2 of those had to resign, so we have 8 currently. So our current fee structure, because we do charge for our services, for individual therapy, the first session, and group therapy, it's all $15 per session. Psychiatric evaluations, which is a 90-minute session, those are $40. Psychiatric follow-ups are $25. These fees used to be higher, but we are very fortunate to get some subsidization through endowment funds to keep those fees a little bit lower. And we are offering workshops for $40 for 4 sessions. Presenting concerns, I've got fall 2021 and then this past fall up there. Anxiety's been a presenting concern probably for pretty much every mental health facility for quite a while. I would not be surprised if Watkins also tells you that's one of their top presenting concerns. Followed by depression, adjustment disorders, ADD or ADHD, attentional problems. Interestingly enough, this fall, we've seen more post-traumatic stress disorders. So students coming in to heal from the effects of some sort of trauma. That's become a bigger concern. So what have we been up to? So this is data from the start of the fiscal year through the end of December. And you'll see that there are some slight increases, there's some decreases. And honestly, when I pulled this data, I was surprised to see that we had increases because at the start of the fall, we had 2 therapists resign. And that really constricted the amount of services that we were able to provide. So to see some increases was kind of surprising to me. But we did overall our total visits, we increased by 4% as compared to last fiscal year. Our initial appointments, we had an 18% decrease. So when a therapist resigns, we have to take all the clients that they're seeing and find therapeutic homes for them. And most of them went to other CAPS therapists. So other CAPS therapists had to absorb those folks. Some of them chose to end and some chose to go out into the community, but the majority of those went to CAPS therapists. And then we were unable to offer as many initial appointments. And we know that that is a big concern on campus, that is, especially at various times in the year, it's really hard to get an appointment at CAPS, get that initial appointment. Individual therapy, we saw a slight increase. Group therapy, this is artificially inflated, the 70% increase. And the reason for that is during the pandemic, we were unable to offer as much group therapy. So this looks quite inflated here. Psychiatric visits, we had a slight increase. Our peer listening, they met with 31 students one-on-one, and they listened to students and provide resources for students. And they connected with 969 students at different tabling events. My SSP, that was new in the fall of 2021. This is funded by endowment, so we're very lucky. This is not something that students pay for. And it really helps to augment the services that we're able to offer at CAPS. This past fall, they opened 250 clinical cases. That meant students either chatted or called with an ISSP licensed therapist. This other data, they're in the process, this seems to be a theme for all of us, is they're also in the process of changing how they're gathering their reports. So currently we're just getting monthly reports. We weren't able to get like the full semester. So this data is a little suspect in terms of it's not the full semester. But they did see 70% undergraduate, 30% graduate. 75% of their calls occurred after campus hours and on weekends. And 79% of students reported never having sought mental health treatment prior to contacting my SSP. I think these are real important statistics because when we brought my SSP on campus, the hope for that was that it would add services that CAPS is not able to provide. And so being able to reach students and have services available when we're closed, and also to reach students who wouldn't reach out to us is really key. 49 students are receiving therapy through my SSP, and 94 articles have been viewed. So not as high as utilization as we like, but it is being utilized. But in terms of the articles and videos, my SSP has a lot of information on it, including a new anxiety hub. So again, anxiety is such a top issue. So lots of resources there. It even has exercise videos and things. So a lot of information for students. So how are we doing? So our fall client satisfaction survey, and actually when I answered the questions that you all posed, I made an error in there and I didn't realize until I went to do this presentation But in there, I think I said that our response rate for our client satisfaction survey was quite small. Actually, it wasn't. We had a 41% response rate, which is pretty good for a survey. I had expected larger, given that we were surveying our own clients. So in my head, I fixed it as it was a small response rate. And I think we got less than I was anticipating because we did it electronically this year instead of over paper, and we had a few hiccups with that. So hopefully we can iron those out and have a better, even a better response rate for the spring. But of the students that we surveyed, of our clients, I should say, 95% strongly or somewhat agreed that they were satisfied with the services and that they would recommend CAPS to a friend. In terms of learning outcomes, 90% strongly or somewhat agreed that they could identify one or more strategies to address or resolve personal problems or difficulties after having received services at CAPS. And 84% strongly or somewhat agreed that they engage in healthy behaviors that will help them graduate from KU. So obviously room for us to improve in there, but I think we're in the right direction where we want to be. So changes that we're working on at CAPS. So new this spring, we started a Thriving with Anxiety workshop. Again, anxiety being such a top presenting issue, we wanted to make sure that we're adding accessible services for that. Also realizing it's really hard to get that first appointment with CAPS. So we made this workshop. So it's under our outreach umbrella, which means that any KU student can call and get signed up for it. They do not have to get that initial appointment in CAPS and be referred into it. So much more accessible for students. We also made it $40, so $10 a session. So reducing that fee. So hopefully it's more accessible for students, and thinking too that if students couldn't afford that, they could apply for the patient assistance through Watkins, which is $50, and they would have this covered for them. So we're hoping that this will be a nice service for students. We're also, a lot of students come to us, not a lot, but a good chunk come to us, and basically for therapy, what they want is more tools for their toolkit, like help me learn to manage stress or anxiety. So we're hoping that this will meet their needs and that they'll choose maybe not to go on to individual therapy, and or we're thinking this is a real economical way that students can jumpstart therapy, because these are things that would be discussed and taught in therapy. And so it's a cheaper way and hopefully quicker way that students can get some needs met and maybe start in with some therapy if that's the route that they want to go. So we also updated our client information form new this spring. So we've made it much more inclusive of different identities, and we've also made it, I think, more customer friendly in that all questions are required to be answered by students, but we've given an opt-out on each question. So there's a choose not to respond. So if students don't want to self-identify in a way or don't think it's relevant, they can choose not to respond. We've also made some software changes, and we're very fortunate that the initial costs for those software changes, we were able to fund through endowment. The ongoing licensing fees we do have to pay out of our budget. But the software changes, one of the things we've been hearing for students is that they would like more autonomy. Who doesn't want more autonomy, right? And luckily technology provides a route for that. So new this spring, students can check themselves in for their appointments at CAPS. And one other thing that we're hoping to pilot, hopefully fairly soon, is to have students be able to schedule their initial appointment online at CAPS. So we're hoping to ease up that initial scheduling process. We're also going to make it so it's not just a same day appointment, but that students can get online and schedule for a week out. So hopefully that will make it much easier for students to get an appointment. We also are really concerned with the fact that because we have limited availability for those initial appointments, what it's boiled down to with these same day appointments is students ended up having to call right at 8 a.m. to get their initial appointment. Well, if a student's depressed or anxious or not sleeping well or has class or work, it's pretty hard to call right at 8 a.m. to get an appointment. And that's very concerning. Like, are we missing students, or students don't even try? So with us online scheduling, we're probably going to open it up. So like at 5 p.m. or something, the next week out, that next day, to keep it a week, will open up for students. So hopefully this will make it a lot easier for students to be able to get that first appointment. My SSP app, they were able to add a therapy option this year or this fall. And that came about because we had a statewide contract and K-State was part of that. So we were able to get therapy in there. This is a great addition too, because they have therapists who might have evening hours or Saturday hours, so provides more flexibility and more options for students. Again, this happens all through endowment funding, so there's no cost to students for that. We were able to hire to fill our open positions. So we had 2 staff start at the beginning of this semester. And we've been starting to work on our waiting room. So the most critical need in our waiting room is it's not accessible. So we want to make it accessible by installing an automatic door so folks can get in easy. And we're going to be looking at possibly some safety issues with it, with the waiting room. But also, if you'd ever been in our waiting room, not a space that I think most people would want to spend any kind of time in, not very welcoming, not warm. So we're hoping to warm up the space, make it inviting. We're hoping that all identities will feel welcome and included there, and maybe just be able to take a breath before they have their therapy appointment and feel very welcome. And we are very fortunate that we have endowment funding to be able to do that. So future plans. Maybe. No, we don't want to go at all.
Maybe my laptop is making apocalyptic predictions. There is no future. I'm sorry about that.
It's just waiting for the big reveal.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go. Okay, future plans. Here it is. Hire a director, which I'm sure will come with other changes because that person will bring in new energy, new ideas. We will be making some additional software changes. Probably another theme we have with Bert Nash is it's very difficult for us to get data and collect and have robust data, and this is going to help us with that. We will also be implementing a new clinical form that will work really nicely hand in hand with our new client information form. This clinical form is something that students will fill out on their, for individual appointments, will fill out on their first visit, and then they'll fill out at regular intervals at subsequent visits. So what it will do is it's self-report data. It will take that student's information. It will compare it to a large and ever-growing database of university and college counseling students who are in therapy at college counseling centers, and it will spit out a report. And it has different, I lost my words, it has different scales on there, like anxiety, depression, eating concerns, those kind of things. So it will compare that client's information with nationally where are students, and it will say low, medium, high. So it gives a lot of clinical information. It also says when the student is in therapy over time at a university counseling center, this is how we expect the curve in terms of them getting better to go. And so we'll know, is the student improving as a kind of typical client or not? And that will open conversations with the client about what's happening here. Are we missing something? It will also allow the therapist to evaluate what they're doing. Do I need to change my approach? Those kind of things. So lots of clinical information will be given with this form. When I've used it before, where I used to work, some students frankly could care less, and it maybe took a minute out of the session to kind of review that where they were. But there were also a lot of students that thought, wow, this is really cool. I can see how my mental health is doing right here. And this is really interesting to see. So it can really be informative for the process. The other thing that new form will do for us is it's going to give us outcome data. So when our future director stands before the future committee, there's going to be much more and much more robust data that's going to be accountability on CAPS. How are we doing? Are our students getting better? How distressed are they? How distressed are they compared to nationally? And are they getting better compared to students nationally? So I think it's really going to provide a lot of helpful information. And I think that the new form and the software changes, well, maybe not the most showiest changes, I think will give us a lot of data and help us at CAPS be data informed in what we're doing and help with that accountability. So I'm very excited about those changes. Other plans, when we had a staff resignation in the fall, that was the person who was heading up our ADHD assessment. And so we had to pull back on that quite severely. And so the new psychologist that we've hired, she's gearing up for that. She'll take over in the fall, and we plan to rebuild that. We also plan to continue to expand and enhance our group therapy program and our workshop offerings. And particularly with the workshop offerings, again, to be able to hit a broader audience or offer that accessibility for students and skills that probably any of us would benefit from. And so that's our hope with that. So that brings me to our, need another big reveal. It's going to bring us, well, the last slides have next to nothing on them. It brings us to our current needs and our asks. So probably the most obvious ask would be, we need more staff. I think that's very evident that we don't have the capacity to meet the demand. People can't get those initial appointments. For years, we have tried to destigmatize mental health and say, come in and see us, never building up the staff. Who does that? Who screams for more cancer or whatever, and then doesn't gear up for what happens when you find more cancer or whatever, but the mental health field did do that. But that unfortunately is not what our current need is. Our current need is that we need to retain our staff. You all asked a question in the fees about what patterns did we see in the pandemic, and the unfortunate pattern that we saw was that we had a lot of staff resignations. And again, when we lose staff, we have to pull back on services. Therapists are absorbing more clients. We have to pull back even more because we need to search. And then if we're fortunate enough to hire, then we have to spend time and effort to orient those folks to campus and how we do things in gaps. So losing staff is very expensive. It's very time intensive. It hurts the morale of the staff because we all like each other, and it's sad to see a colleague go. At the same time, it's kind of bittersweet. We're happy for the next thing that they're going on to, but it does hurt the morale of the staff, and to have so many resignations at once, it's really hard. The other thing is, which is not surprising to you all, is it's really, really, really hard to hire these days. And we are in a mental health crisis. So it's there's a huge demand for therapists. And the very unfortunate thing is the salaries at CAPS are under market. And we need to be able to retain our staff and to hire future staff. We need to get our salaries to market. We need to fairly compensate our folks so that we can retain them. And then when we turn around to hire, we're able to hire them. We had 3 searches for a psychologist in the spring, and all of those failed because we were not able to find anybody. So realizing that we've got a big problem, we need to get up to market. So our ask is astronomically high. I acknowledge that. We're asking for a $7 increase, which I know is very, very huge. That would allow us next year to come in and remain flat, not ask the next committee, and that would allow us to get our therapy staff where they need to be. I'm fairly confident, and I'm not a betting person, but I would take this bet that every office could come in here and tell you the same story, which is our salaries are not at market value and we're understaffed. And I get that. I also understand that, and I think we all do after this pandemic, that mental health is really, really key to performance, to well-being. And we are in a crisis right now, and we're going to see it. Kirsten said that, expecting the curve to go down. And I actually was not expecting it to go down. And part of that is I have a senior at high school. And while they don't talk to me a lot as a maybe typical adolescent, when they do talk about what's going on in the high school and how people are doing or not doing. And then when I talked to a cousin who is a 4th grade teacher in small town Nebraska, and this one didn't surprise me because it's small town Nebraska, and they retired early because they were exhausted and they were dealing with so many mental health and behavioral problems in their classroom. And they looked at the 3rd grade class coming up and they said, no, I can't do this. We are going to be seeing waves and waves of people for years who are not doing well. And when Kirsten said the acuity and the intensity is high, it is. The people that were not doing well pre-pandemic, really not doing well in the pandemic. And so we feel that. So that's our ask. We do feel like we provide a very important need for students. And I just want to acknowledge again, it is a big ask. So appreciate what you can do.
I just want to add a couple things since Lori is interim director and we're currently looking for a new director, a couple additional pieces. One, there's complete student affairs support for this ask. We know it's astronomical among the student affairs departments. This is the largest one you're going to receive. It's a combination of things, right? So it's that the staff salaries have not been where they need to be. And so we are needing to make that correction. Everyone that Lori brings in at a higher level than existing staff, that just continues to ding morale. So we need to raise those salaries across the board. We're working with human resources on this. So this is not just me and Lori deciding where those staff salaries need to be. It is hand in hand with human resources. And I had another thought that I thought was important, and maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I want you to know this. So we've launched our CAPS director search. We are using, because we are hearing from colleagues across the campus, these positions are incredibly difficult to fill. We are using a national search firm. And we are also expecting that we are going to need to pay the new director significantly more than we were paying that outgoing director who retired in the summer. Now the provost has met our request to fund that search firm and to fund the gap in the director's salary from what's budgeted. So that's a piece that you all do not need to absorb or be concerned about. And then the other piece that I wanted to say is we have been in the process with CAPS of eating into our carry forward. And even without the staff salaries, staff salary increases, there would have been a need for an increase just to balance the budget. This is just exponentially expediting that moving into a deficit mode with CAPS. And so we work closely with Casey on identifying the scholar figures.
And I'll add two additional things to that. One is, yes, we've launched the search for the director, which I'm thrilled. I am not applying for that. I'm going to be very glad when I'm back to one day job as clinical director. That's really my passion. And another thing I will add is that about 65% of our budget comes from fee. So we do rely quite heavily on you all for our budget. So questions?
So is this $7 to keep the lights on? I mean, can you maybe go into detail about the acuteness of this ask? I mean, you mentioned that you've been unsustainably winding down your reserve, and peer review committees love to pass the build on to their heirs and ask agencies to do that, as we're facing today. So I guess what I'm asking is, can you speak to, what exactly, we give you $7, what do you spend it on?
The $7, that's a great question. So a lot of it is salary and fringe is what we spend it on, and then it's operating expenses. So it would be for our software, it would be it's the custodial, it's the
Keeping the lights on.
Keeping the lights on. We try to go as paperless as possible, but it is for office supplies. So it is but salary I think is a large part, and maybe Casey's nodding her head. Salary is a large part. When you're working with master's and doctoral level therapists, salary becomes a large part of what we do.
So I just want to add a little to that if I can. So it's the ask is primarily driven by salaries and balancing the budget as we've been eating into the carry forward for 2-3 years, Casey. So in FY21, their fee was $31.55. Going into FY22, then it happens that we're going to reduce the fee and you start spending into your carry forward, spending that. For the last 2 years, that is what happened, that they've been spending down that carry forward. Because that was the request by Senate, but now they're having to turn around and come back and basically to get back to where they were. It's the $7 to get back. It's like a $2, I think, and then to get to where they need to be with the additional $5. And this is to carry them through the next 2 years. So you should not see CAPS come forward next year asking for an additional increase. So this is to cover what we see as a collision course that's happening in the next 2 years. And I do want to give a shout out to Lori and to Casey, because one of the first steps they did is in the budget, they really looked at all the budget items. And there were some areas like OOE that was maybe had a cushion in it that it didn't need to have. So they first tightened all that up by looking at what are CAPS's actual expenses. So they did all that budget work up front. So there really is not a lot of cushion built into the budget.
Okay, what other questions are there? Alessia?
So in regard to your satisfaction survey, I think it's really great that CAPS is taking these steps towards advancing KU's mission of student wellness and increasing accessibility of these services. And I guess in terms of satisfaction surveys, I was wondering if when taking those surveys, like those were students who were seeing CAPS maybe one time or twice, and or if those were like long-term CAPS patients. And then secondarily, like, is that a data point that you might be interested in looking at in the future, if not?
Exactly. Can you clarify what do you mean a data point?
Like in terms of like, how are patients feeling if they're only seeing CAPS for a few visits versus seeing CAPS for like long-term mental health care?
Yeah, those are great questions. So to answer your question, when we did the client satisfaction survey, we took, I think it was about 2 weeks in the fall at the peak. And so it was a mixture of students coming in one time, and some of them were like, this is my first time, but it had skip logic to kind of guide the questions in there. And it had long-term clients in there. But to answer your second question, that would be great to take and separate that data out and see if there's a difference, and we have not done that. So thank you for that idea. Good ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
How often are the patients overflowing into Bert Nash at a current rate? Like initial appointments, that type of stuff.
Overflow in terms of how often do we refer?
Yeah,
Or
like as a direct result of understaffing.
oh, that is a great question. I don't know that we would have that data. And even the data of the number of people we refer is a little suspect in my mind. Again, the new software is going to help us like actually get exact data. The folks who we refer are usually folks that are have needs that we're not able to meet at CAPS, and that Bert Nash can, because they provide much more, as you saw their list of wraparound services. But I don't know if we would know the overflow, because they may not contact us or stop coming, and so I don't know that we would have that data. But do you have a? I don't know either, because there's no one route. Yeah. For instance, someone might go to the ER first, and then put the Bert Nash from the ER. So I would hope to get more detail about that data in the future, but I don't think that. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not sure how we would measure that, but it is a great question.
Spear?
First, I want to say thank you so much for coming in today. We really appreciate everything process. My question was, how does this cosmic caseload change for a therapist in the resignation of the other two? Or have therapists seen an increase in caseload due to that?
That's also a really good question, and I don't have the data on that. I know there was that initial absorption of clients that happened, and honestly didn't collect data on that. But we do at CAPS, and this is why it's hard to get that initial appointment. One of the ways that we're able to try to manage the demand when we don't have the capacity is that we limit the number of initial appointments, so that we make sure ethically, we want to make sure that we're able to treat our existing clients. And so we do limit that initial. So I think that's why you saw that 18% decrease, is we're not taking on even more people. But I don't know specifically how that increased. I know that, yeah. But that is a good question. And again, I'm hoping the new software is going to give us a lot more of those data points that we just can't. Even now, monitoring what a clinician's caseload is not easy on our current softwares.
Yeah, so with this $7 increase, you wouldn't be hiring any more people. It's
just to keep who we have. Yeah, it would help in future hires, because then our salaries would be up to market and we'd be able to attract people.
I have one, and then I'll go with Turner. So you'd mentioned that it's almost ubiquitous, the concern that staffing rates at fee-funded entities are well below market level. What do you think makes CAPS's needs so exigent such that it would justify prioritizing raising your employees' pay to market rate versus, you know, any of the other fee entities that have come in and asked for us?
You know, but my first response is my heart saying like, I think everyone's important. I can't say that we're more important than somebody else. Yeah, that's a tough call, and I don't know that I can answer that. So,
Appreciate it.
yeah, I think you all are in a tight spot.
That's putting it lightly.
Other than just to say the profession's been hit very hard by the growing mental health needs across US, and then knowing that providers is tough, and so providers are making life choices that's pulling them out of the field, or altering. Like I think of one specific provider who's left KU that has gone into a role where she has total control, only sees 4 clients a day. So is making the same amount of money, if not more, than she was at KU, and it's just in a completely different private enterprise than what either of these two operations are doing.
So if we give you the $7 increase, right, will any of that budget still be going towards filling those positions? And you said you're looking for a therapist in the spring 3 times during the job search, right? Is that funding still going to be allocated for adding new employees, or will all of those funds be only for sure the current?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were actually able to fill our positions in this next go around, so we did find a psychologist, but we did have to offer them market level, which means our folks are being paid less than our in-person. So we're doing a salary correction to make sure that our folks are fairly compensated. But yes, we have been able to fill our open positions except for the director. That's not good.
Holly?
I was just wondering, so I know that for students that are not international students, or the 3Gs that get the student healthcare, so they don't have to pay the $15. Have you thought about increasing the $15 per session, and how that might help? Because $15 is a really big saving. When I wasn't a student between my master's and my PhD, and I had to still go to my therapist, I had to go privately, and it was about $100 for 1 hour. And so I'm not saying that it would be a great idea to increase that price for students, as we are students, but it maybe might help. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That's been somewhat of a discussion, because that's the other thing that's at our disposal, because 65% comes from fee, and then you get a lot from that fee for service. The difficulty with that is that $15 for some students is too much. They can't afford that. And so in an ideal world, I mean, they're already paying student fees. They wouldn't pay, you know, that our services would be free in an ideal world. We have thought about increasing those, but it does get hard, because then it's like, how are we being equitable to students who can't afford? There is that patient's assistance fund. It's $50, and that can tap out pretty quickly.
Yes.
Therapy is often not a quick process, especially when you're talking about healing from trauma or different things. The other thing we have talked about is maybe we increase our no-show and late cancellation fee to $25 or $30. And so that way, hopefully it encourages students to utilize the appointments. So we don't have like a no-show or late cancellation and then that slot goes by, so we can see more students. But again, sometimes students who are struggling the most tend to no-show because they're depressed and they can't get out of bed or something. So it's not an easy, I guess if it was a strict business decision, that would be an easy, increase the fee. But from a compassion standpoint, it's a harder, but absolutely that would be on the table.
Well, that is all we have time for. We have your contact information. Is it okay if we reach out at a later date with more specific questions? Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. Go, Alan, to come on in.
What's up, Casey?
Send me a Zoom link, and when I get the bar, I'll come back. Thank you.
Will do.
Yeah, just a lot where do I need to be? Yes. If they're not yeah, yeah.
The table is ours.
Yes. Yours. Any box. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, debating whether or not. And I was like. Thank you.
Email them.
We have a lot of.
Hey, Laura, do you coordinate with
Agency is.
What's worry on?
We've all been here for
Since three.
Since when? 3, and yesterday too, right? And also Monday. And Monday. So how's it going?
At my house.
It's not enough for me to spend these interview training.
No.
Currently running on an inadvisable level of caffeine myself. It's no good. Okay, is your presentation in the SharePoint? Board?
I know, I thought that was before.
Let's hope. Let's. Fingers crossed. Yep, we got it. Okay, cool. You have a full list. We got a little one, so.
Oh, I usually.
You and your.
But I only said my first meeting.
We won't be that, yeah, hopefully.
Okay.
No. Okay, sure.
Minus that one.
Screen share. That's fine. You just have to do it. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. We're running a little bit behind. Next up, we have Ellen Herman from our fee director for Watkins Health Services, the beautiful building next door to the Student Recreation Center. Please welcome Watkins Health Services. Got my water bottle.
All right, thanks for having me. Do you all want to go through the questions or do you want me to skip those?
We have all the responses.
Okay. Okay, so I thought I would talk a little bit about what the student health fee covers to start out with. All of the office visits that are with a medical provider in our clinic, that includes our physicians, nurse practitioners, our athletic trainer, psychiatric nurse practitioners, and our social worker. Those are all covered at no charge to the students and no copay either. That it also qualifies the students for a significantly reduced fees for a majority of our services. We do the management of compliance for university policies that includes alcohol, EDU, and immunization compliance. We also are in charge of the emergency response plan for campus.
I know you just heard from CAPS, but paying the student health fee also qualifies somebody for services at CAPS. And the services that are offered by Hero, which does fall under our budget, all the services that they offer are free of charge with the exception of the BLS classes that they teach. So that includes all the health education programs, wellness fairs, safer spring break activities, and you can read the others on there, but all of those services are covered underneath the health fee. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we've done over the last year, because I want to make sure that you all know that we're being good stewards with your money that the students are paying. So as far as customer experience goes, and we have shifted from customer service to customer experience, because we don't want to be just nice and friendly. We want to make sure that everything about the visit is good. You know, that the bathrooms are clean, that parking is good, that we're not having people on hold too long on the phones, that they can access things through the portal. So we're looking at all of the whole package of the experience. So I myself meet with every single new employee that we have and all of our new student employees to discuss the customer experience expectations that I have for them. We do monthly customer experience training in all of our staff meetings, all staff meeting, which we have once a month. And then that customer experience emphasis that I just talked about. We'd had some departments do some cross observations so that they could realize what all work was being done by their coworkers in other departments and kind of understand and see how things kind of work downstream or upstream. And that was a really big help. We improved the privacy in all of our areas within the clinic. We noticed on our last survey that there was a few comments about students not feeling like they that their visits were private because they could hear conversations in the hall. And we worked on that a lot this year. We hosted a lot of flu and COVID vaccines across campus to bring our services to you instead of having you always come to us. We started the Watkins Patient Assistance Fund, which means that every student is eligible for up to $50 of assistance with their bill. If they're not able to pay it, we don't ever want a student to have to choose between buying food or paying for medicine and other things like that. We're in the process of doing this. It won't start until March, but we're increasing our patients surveys from twice a year to 4 times a year because I want more feedback. I like feedback. I like to understand what we're doing well and what we're not doing well. And so that we can work on that and improve from there. We realized a couple of things with our discharge process. So when patients are kind of flowing through the clinic, you know, it's a big clinic and we have a lot of services in there like lab and x-ray and pharmacy. And the patients were a little confused about 2 things. One is we recognize that people don't retain the information that they hear during a visit. So we want to make sure they have something to look back on when they leave our clinic. And then the other part was knowing if we send somebody to the business office to check on pricing, or to the pharmacy to pick up a prescription, are they okay to go home or do they need to come back to the room? Things like, so there's 2 different pieces of the discharge process, but we worked on that to kind of streamline things for the patients. And then we created a QR code that directs patients to or students to billing questions and answers. So we have a lot of comments about people not understanding what's covered under their student health fee. And that is common, just every single survey that we get, people just don't understand. And so we created that so that they have an easy place to go and look. I wanted to give you a little update. We just got our patient survey results from November, and this is done through ACHA, but they don't consider the results final until we get the spring results back, but we can get results at any time. So these are great improvements over the survey that was done last April. So 89% of the respondents said that Watkins is their usual source of care while they're at college. It was 88% last year. Again, we have that red because 66% said they didn't understand the health fee. 94% said they know how to use the patient portal, which is good. 97% of the respondents said they would recommend the health center to their peers, and that's up from 86% last year. So that's a huge increase. 83% said our services made it easier to stay enrolled in school, and last year was 80%. So that was a nice increase. 89% of students said they received information from our clinic that helped improve their health, which was up from 88% last year. And another big one that we always look at is overall satisfaction with the visit. And it was 97% this time and only 91% last time. So we're making huge improvements. We're noticing that all the things we're doing to improve that experience are working. And we see it through our surveys. I wanted to tell you a little bit about some projects that we did. I think you all know that we transitioned under the oversight of the health system 2 years ago almost, and I'm the first director to be hired underneath that new arrangement. I have a huge background in process improvement and I love doing projects. So we are constantly doing projects. And if any of you are familiar, it was called Lean Six Sigma in some places or process improvement. So we did get our reaccreditation through AAAHC. This is huge because this means that we meet high patient safety standards. The certification recognizes the quality of the service that we provide and our commitment to high quality healthcare. You may not realize this, but only 11% of student health centers across the country are accredited with any agency. So we're in part of an elite group. A couple of the metrics that we I like to measure certain things, especially when we make changes, just to make sure that we're making the right changes and that they're effective and that people are following the processes. So there's a few projects that we did this year. I'm going to go into some detail shortly on a couple of them, but not all. We wanted to make sure we were obtaining local addresses on 100% of the students when they come in, because it does affect whether we can submit an electronic prescription or whether they receive our statements in the mail and things like that. Wait times for scheduled patients. This was a big one for us. We did this over the summer when we didn't have a high volume of walk-ins because we wanted to get the scheduled process worked out before we went to the high volume of walk-in patients. And our goal was for scheduled patients to wait 15 minutes or less 95% of the time. And we only missed our goal a few times. We wanted our imaging reports received within 24 business hours. Our goal was always 100%. We met that every single time because that does delay your care if we don't get those reports in time from the outside vendor. And then we worked on the wait time for walk-in patients. This was huge. I don't know how many of you are in like your senior year, but if you are, maybe you realized a few years ago that you used to come into Watkins and see people just sitting everywhere on the floors and the chairs. One student came in a few months ago and said, "Are you guys seeing less patients these days? Because I don't see anybody sitting everywhere." And we said, "No, we just have improved our processes so people don't wait that long anymore." So our goal was for students to wait less than 30 minutes, 80% of the time. Some of those things are out of our control. If we have a bunch of providers that happen to call in sick on the same day, or we get a snow day or something like that, those definitely impacted our goal, reaching our goal. But we have a stoplight process that we use now. I shared that with Camden a few weeks ago when we met, but we tweaked it a little bit and now patients can move through the clinic much smoother. So we wanted to make sure that you all were not spending half of your day waiting on a walk-in visit. The ones that we just finished working on were lab specimens that show up in the lab without an order. Our goal was less than 10% of those would not have an order. That's a national benchmark. And I wanted to share some details about, I think it's important for you to know why we do these things. So anytime a lab specimen gets to the lab without an order, it just delays your care. They can't process that specimen without an order. And so they spend a lot of time tracking down an order and it just delays the processing time and then the patient's care. So when we started tracking this in November, we had 4% of the specimens that came to the lab had no orders. We only had 5 days out of the entire month where we were at 100% had orders. By the time we reached January, and every time we had an outlier, we looked at it to see what we could do to make things better and what caused this. And so by the time we reached January, we were only at 2%, and we had 16 days where we were 100%. So that was a huge, and the providers just told me this morning that this was probably one of the most impactful projects that we did over the last couple of years. Then we were looking at no-show rates, because when we have no-shows, it means that another student cannot get in for a visit. So no-shows are really important. They don't cost us money because you guys don't pay for your visits, but they do keep another student from getting an appointment that they need. So we've been doing a lot of work on no-shows too. The other thing we did was we moved our psychiatric nurse practitioners and social worker to a larger area of the clinic so that they can make a space that was more calming and welcoming for the students who are here for mental health visits. And we began releasing lab and imaging reports immediately to the patient portal in July of 2022. So if you have ever been to another doctor's office somewhere on the outside of the student health center, you know that whenever your labs get done, you see the results immediately in your portal. And so ours come out to the portal now, even if the provider hasn't seen them yet. So patients do have early access to all of that. We opened our athletic trainer schedule to web booking, which increased his visits by 32%. So that was huge. And then we are doing a medication and allergy review project now. We want all of our patients to have their medications and allergies updated every single visit. That is a patient safety goal. It's for your safety. And so we are tracking those every single day to make sure that those things were verified either by the nurse or the provider. And we just started tracking that on February 1st. The other thing is we got a new lab instrument. You all probably know that a couple of years ago, we had to close our high capacity lab because all of our medical scientists retired after the transition. And we had to do a lot of what's called point of care lab. And then what happened is we had to outsource a lot of our labs to LabCorp, which is not a satisfier for a student. It's much cheaper to get those tests done in-house. And the turnaround time on the results is much faster if we can do them in-house. So have more point of care options are available. We're bringing them in-house as quick as we can. So we have this new instrument that with one swab now we test for flu A, flu B, COVID, and RSV. So we'll know exactly what's wrong with the student with one swab. This is what everyone else is using. We're using it now too. It's a cost savings for the students. And we had to create a process work group because the turnaround time on the test is a little bit longer than what we're used to with the rapids. And so we didn't want the students having to wait around an hour for results. So we figured out a good process where you can come in, have your swab, you can go back home, and we are going to call in the prescription. You can see the results in your portal, things like that. So we've done a lot of projects this year. And those are the ones that I just wanted to highlight. Some other things we did was we implemented RQI, which stands for Resuscitation Quality Improvement System. This is so all of our clinical staff can get their BLS and CPR skills checks done quarterly. So most people get that done every 2 years, but in a clinic setting where we hardly ever do CPR, which we're glad for, but people aren't competent if they don't do it often. And so we wanted to make sure that they were doing them regularly. So now they get a skills check every quarter. And the mannequin actually tells them if their compressions are fast enough or deep enough, and it's really a cool system. So if you ever want to see it, just come over and we'll show it off. But we did have to purchase our own mannequin and the computer system that went with it. We implemented a minor consent form process last year to meet legal requirements for anyone who is under the age of 18. And then through the health system side, we implemented a portal where we could manage our policies and procedures electronically rather than on paper. So we're using their platform for that. And then we converted to their risk management platform that allows us to electronically track and trend so that we know if maybe a certain department has an issue that we need to address, or maybe it's even a certain person that we need to do some training or re-education on. Then under service, we implemented team nursing. So if you've been a patient in the clinic, you may not have noticed this, but every provider now has their own medical assistant, which wasn't the case. So they have the same person every day. That allows them to build trust and continuity in care. So if you come back and see that same provider, you have the same medical assistant that's rooming you. Every team has an RN that kind of manages the team. They do the more complex things. This is how it is standard in the outside world of healthcare. And it just allows for those providers to build trust with their medical team and allow the nurses to do more, which allows the providers to see more patients. So that we implemented this year. We did have 2 open physician positions. We converted one of those to another psychiatric nurse practitioner position. So because of the increased demand for mental health visits, that new person started this past year, I think in August, and those providers do see patients for free under the student health fee. So that gives us 2 providers now that do those visits. We brought physical therapy from an outside vendor on site last year in April, and this month they're going to be full-time in the clinic. They have been doing just 2 days a week, but they're busy enough now that they're going to be full-time. And then we're going to continue to partner with the dental vendor that we brought on campus. They have been coming 1 week every other month. Because of the volumes, they're going to start coming 2 weeks every other month in the near future, hopefully in March. And then, like I said earlier, all of the services by Hero continue to be covered under the student health fee. So we did have to buy some new equipment so that we can keep up with the times, and we want to have the best available equipment so that it's safe. And, I went through the clinic one day and found that there was an instrument we were using that was wires showing, and I said, we can't have that. So we went through everything and checked to see what we needed to replace, but we bought that mannequin and cart that I mentioned for the RQI system. We bought a weight bearing stand for imaging, so if patients needed a foot and ankle x-ray, they had something to stand on. We bought an actual immunization chair, and because they were using a recliner. We bought vital sign carts so that every team has their own, so they're not running around looking for a cart. An evacuation sled is so that if we had patients that couldn't, that weren't mobile, and the elevators were shut down for some reason, like a fire, we can take them down the stairs on a sled, and nobody would be trapped on the second floor. And then we upgraded various outdated equipment throughout the building. So now on to our budget. These are our predictions for this year. And so I don't know if you've looked at our budget for the last 2 years, but we actually have done pretty well. Of course, we always budget the worst case scenario. And if all of our positions were full and, we bought all the supplies we think we need, this is where we would land. So our revenue with the student health fees and the revenue that we collect from our fee for service is about $8.2 million. And then for expenses, you can see we have a lot of clinical contracts, janitorial services, pharmacy supplies, medical supplies, all kinds of things. That usually comes up to about $2.1 million a year. It's expensive in healthcare. And then salaries are about $7.5 million. When you have a bunch of medical providers, their salaries add up. So doctors and nurse practitioners do cost money. So, and that's the salaries and benefits together. So if you add the expenses and salaries together, it's $9.7 million a year. So if you look at the bottom line, and our revenue is 8.2 and our expenses were 9.7, we would be in the hole $1.4 million. Like I said, that's the worst case scenario. We haven't been in the hole since I've been here. We do these constant improvement projects. We have academic employees who work the same as the school year, and so they are budgeted as full-time employees, but they work academic year. And then we would continue to do process improvement projects and be good stewards of the finances. So just know we're constantly looking for ways to improve. Bringing those lab services back in-house is going to help us improve our revenue over time. It's not going to happen immediately. But some things to consider is we won't receive another lump sum payment of health fees until the summer. Our salary and benefit expenses are about $500,000 a month. This number will increase as we fill the open positions. We still have one full-time, part-time to full-time physician position that we need to fill. And we think we have someone who will take that job this summer. But we do want to request a flat fee. We don't think we need an increase, but we do think that a decrease would be very detrimental to the services that we can offer under the health fee. So that's the end of my presentation. If you want me to open it up for questions. Yes.
What questions do we have?
Yes.
My question is, because I don't think this was touched on in the presentation unless I just wasn't listening, but what kind of work have you all been doing with that DEI focus, like on recruiting doctors and nurses and other staff that, share the same identities as campus? Because I feel like I've been at KU for 10 years, it'll be 11 actually, and I haven't seen much change in that regard within the health center, and especially as I'm an international student, a lot of my friends are people of color. I feel like we need to have a health center that is more representative of what our campus is like. And so I just wondered what work is being done in regards to that.
So I totally agree with you. But when you have positions that require advanced degrees and certifications, you are limited to the people who have those and the people who apply for the positions. So in regards to our providers, and I don't know if most of you know this, but their salaries are significantly less than what they would make in the outside world. The draw here is that they can get additional time off. So it's really, really hard to recruit into those positions because you have to find the right person that's willing to take the salary that we have to offer. And normally they're in the middle to late end of their career because they've done the grind and they're kind of, tired of that and want to do something different that's maybe a little bit slower pace. And so it's the same with our nursing staff. They require certifications, and we are completely limited to the people who apply for those positions. We finally got most of the staff salaries in line with what their counterparts are making at the health system. So it has made it easier to recruit the other positions. But we're still struggling with the providers because we've had that open physician position open the whole entire time I've been here for 2 years, and we haven't filled it yet. So we've had interest, and we've had actually quite a variety of people who have applied for the job, but when they hear the salary, they're not interested. So the one candidate that we do think may be coming this summer that wants to join us wants to do halftime teaching and halftime here. So that's the way that that we could make it work as far as the salary goes. So I agree. I would love it if we could get more diversity, and we certainly will if we can.
I should add that Watkins merged with the University of Kansas Health System, and is that 2 years ago? And as a result, their salary floor was raised because as part of the health system, there's a minimum salary that has to be paid, which, if I'm correct, was far above what some of your current employees are making, correct?
Right. And they aggressively recruit at the health system. They have the med center up there, and they are aggressively recruiting. But most of the physicians who are coming right out of school, they're interested in seeing lots of patients and making lots of money and things like that. So we really are limited to the people who are interested in doing student health. And I think the people that we have now are really high quality, and we're very, very lucky to have them. Yes.
Yeah, what are the most common visits? Like, what are the top 3?
So right now, because of COVID, probably respiratory symptoms is #1. We're pretty proud of the students because they come in to be seen for visits that probably in the past they wouldn't have gone. They just let it right out. But they do want to know if they have COVID or if they have flu. And so we're super impressed that they've been coming in after that. A lot of sore throats, a lot of mental health. Our medical director says all the time that he's surprised at the number of mental health visits that they have in primary care here. And then, of course, STI. So those are our 4 top ones.
What's up? It's primarily about like how you're factoring jobs into the budget. Do you guys plan on filling the, was it like 1.5 positions that are still left? And is that still being put into your budget proposal for this year? Like assuming that those are filled, and like very closely connected to that is like the part about the new psychiatric nurse hire. Was that hire brought in at like market value? And no.
Nobody is.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
none of the
assume so.
providers are. But like I said, the reason they are interested in working here is not, most of them have an interest in student health. Just know that, #1. But, it is a great job for a nice quality of work-life balance, and if they have small children, and it's a really nice job that can work well with kids' soccer games. And, if they just don't want to work, a lot of them came from urgent care where they were working weekends and 12-hour shifts, and they just, wanted a change. And so we bring them in as close as we can. But the health system does trim off a percentage of that because they earn additional, what we call balance time, that the other nurse practitioners at the health system don't get. And so it's a nice trade-off for them, and no one has complained about their salary.
So is the 1.5 position like 1.5? Is that factored in?
Yes,
Like
so we've had the placeholder in there the whole time in the budget, but it's really only 1 position. So it's either we could fill it with a halftime person, but if somebody wanted to work full-time, we have it in there as full-time.
So how long has it been?
At least 2 years since I've been here.
Got it.
So Ellen, my understanding is that your projections for fiscal year 24 next year assumes that all of these open positions and outstanding potential expenses are filled.
Yes.
So you're projecting a $1.4 million shortfall. However, that's by no means a guarantee.
Right.
So essentially what I'm getting at is that, do you have any idea as what kind of increase you would ask for next year? I mean, do your projections go out that far?
So my hope is to not ask for an increase. So because we've always done really well with the projects, and I'm hoping that our revenue in the lab is going to increase back up to where we can level some of those other deficiencies out. But I can't predict in the future, but I will say that one of the things that I did when I've talked about team nursing is the clinic was extremely heavy with RNs. And for two reasons, it's not a satisfier for RNs to work in a clinic. They're not trained to work in clinics. They're trained to work in hospitals. So, but also they were doing the same work as medical assistants, which don't require as much training and knowledge as the RNs have. So over the last 2 years, as people retired or left for other jobs, we completely switched the staffing model. So we have way more medical assistants now than we do RNs, which was a cost savings because you can almost get 2 medical assistants for the price of 1 RN. So we actually ended up with more staff for the same amount of money.
Questions? The HERO program, the website says that it is on hold for a lot of programs. Do you know what is the reason for that?
They have a couple open positions and Jennifer might have more information, but the nutrition position is open. I think that's the only one, right, that they're not offering right now.
That is the only one at this moment, one of the health educators left in the fall semester, and I believe they may have that posted. Then there's a marketing position, a staff member that is in the process of moving to a different department.
Yeah. So it should be only the programs that were related to that one position that are just on hold for now. But as soon as they get that filled, they'll be offering everything again.
What about the can you quit? And there are a few other school value. Some other things. They say that it is currently on hold due to staffing changes.
Yeah, that's that. Oh, the whole website does?
Yes.
Oh,
Not just for one, like I looked at 3 pages.
okay. Well, I'll have to have them look into that because I don't,
Your website.
yeah, that shouldn't be the case. I'll look into that. It should be just the programs that are at that one person handled.
Which would have been in the area of nutrition.
Right.
And some of the services listed on Watkins, the prices are not clearly put on the website, like, do you know what is the reason, like, does Watkins deal with it, or are you guys outsourcing this to a third party, like dental or sports medicine?
So some of the services are offered by others, and that's a way for us to provide the service, but we don't have to incur the expenses. So that way we don't have to ask for increases in the student health fee, but we bring the services on site. So that would be the orthopedic specialists that come on site, physical therapy, and that dental vendor. So those are the ones, and they all bill their own services through the student's health insurance. And it's actually working out really well. They do pay us rent for not the dental vendor because they're in the parking lot, but the one from LMH that come over, they do pay us rent. So that gives us a small source of additional revenue to offset some expenses.
Do you have any revenue projections for when the lab is back up and running up from the current 8 million that you're making off of fees?
So right now we're doing the test that we're going to do with the instruments that we just got. Our test that we were doing rapid and billing them in-house. So that is only going to shift a little bit because we're testing for RSV, which is something we never tested for before. Where we're really going to see the increase, so I don't have the numbers for you yet, is in the spring. That same instrument will be able to bring our STI testing back in-house. That's something that's completely outsourced right now to LabCorp. The other ones are just kind of scattered where we do some in-house and some send out, so it's kind of hard to judge right now. But as soon as we can get that STI testing back in-house, the other big one too with that I forgot to mention is that same instrument will run our strep cultures, throat cultures. So normally if a strep culture was negative or a throat swab was negative, we'd send it to LabCorp for them to do a culture. The new instrument, there will be no culture. So that's a cost savings to the students too. There won't be that added cost.
Okay, so just in terms of percentage, what was the percentage of revenue that lab made up before all this was completed?
I would say that we probably lost about 20% of the revenue in the lab. And if I had to guess right now, I would say that by summer, we could probably make up about 10%. That's just a guess.
It get to like 8.8 million probably.
Maybe.
Not your math.
Don't quote me on that.
All I was wrong.
Kind of had a question, so I just missed my.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Samantha.
Sorry, I left a little late. I was wondering if you had any comments on DEI training that you provided.
I also said.
I know you asked a similar question, but so in the absence of this provider, I also work in a field where it's very hard to recruit minority.
Mhm.
But in the absence of doing that, we can train our providers to be more responsive. Can you tell us a little bit about what Watkins has done in that area?
Sure. So all of our staff still have some requirements to do the training that's offered through KU, through My Talent. The health system is rolling out a new DEI training series that they have started last year with their senior executive leaders, and they'll be rolling it down to other employees probably over the next year. We've brought safe zone training over several times to the clinic so that we could maximize the number of employees who would take that training. And then when I meet with the new employees to talk about our customer experience expectations, I also talk to them about our expectations around diversity and inclusion. So I feel like we're covering our bases as much as we can right now. And like I said, when the health system starts rolling their program out, that'll help even more.
So you mentioned the safe zone training. Are you getting that from the Center for Sexuality and Gender Diversity? Is that where you're getting safe zone training?
Yes.
Okay, and then,
So-
so what's my talent for the PPI?
That's through KU. They have an online portal where they can put trainings in there that are required. So we get assigned the training, and then if we don't do the training, we get emails saying, hey, you didn't do this training, so we have to do it, or else we won't be compliant.
It's like the sound equivalent of. Anything else?
And then to answer your question about the safe zone training, we did, there was a time where the safe zone training wasn't being offered on campus. So I think when there was a position that was open, so we had the health system come and give their safe zone training, and we realized that wasn't geared towards university specific. So we told them we were going to go back to the university training so that we could be specific for college students. So
Charged for it, training, or?
did they charge for it?
Yeah.
No.
How does the athletic trainer work and how many people use that?
A lot. So it used to be that his schedule was not very full. And so that's why it increased his schedule to web booking, and it increased his visits by like 32%. So anyone who has a musculoskeletal injury, it's a hard word to say, but say you have an ankle injury or you sprain your finger or something like that, he can see the patient and it frees up the medical providers to see other things. And he's actually really good. He spends a lot of time with his patients. He'll spend 30 to 45 minutes on a visit with a patient, take x-rays if we need it. He's highly trained. And then he also will cover some club sports in the evenings or weekends when they require or ask for a athletic trainer. And we do have a couple of PRN athletic trainers too, which means they work for us as needed. So when club sports ask for an athletic trainer to be at their events, and the band has asked us to cover their events this year too, that we have someone we can send over just in case they have a medical emergency. But they're also certified in BLS and first aid so that they can respond to any kind of thing that might happen on the field.
I know Josh really great. I use this.
No, yeah.
I have a question. About the feedback you mentioned, is it related to the student health advisory board or is it separate?
That's its own separate thing.
It's on separate. Do we have any advisory board now?
Yes, I'm the chair of that. We're
So
working.
do
on
they have a
putting
survey
it together.
results?
What?
Do you have survey results?
Yes, those are all through the surveys that you're conducting, correct? The way it works is you have a visit and you get an email from me. It says it's from me. It's from Watkins Health Services with a link to a survey.
Yeah.
And then that's how they're collecting feedback.
So during the month that we do this survey, anyone who comes in for an appointment gets the link to the survey.
Okay, I haven't got that recently, so just checking. Because
Well, if you didn't come in for a visit during the month we did the survey, you wouldn't get the survey.
Oh, just for 1 month.
Yeah, so that's why they increased it. So now if you were seen in October, November, March, or April, you will get the survey.
And it did happen because I told them so.
And just know that KU typically has more respondents than most of the other schools in Kansas, at least. We have high respondents, so I feel really good about the accuracy of the feedback we get.
Yeah, so You said it's been like about 2 years since you filled the position. And you're keeping all of the unopened positions at part of your budget, assuming that they will be filled. Like realistically, how many do you think will be filled by the end of the fiscal year? And
All
account
of them.
for the budget?
So we think we'll fill the physician wants to start, if she comes on board, she wants to start in September.
Okay.
So that would be at the beginning of this next year. The only position we still have unfilled is a PRN athletic trainer. Just as of this week, we have filled every other open position at Watkins.
Gotcha, thanks.
Anything else? Okay, thank you so much, Ellen. Really
Okay.
appreciate you coming in. Thank you for the presentation. She is a rock star among rock stars.
Can't get them to stop sharing. but
That's all
you
good.
can
Don't
figure
worry
it out.
about it. You know, we've had problems with this all day. It's all right.
Check that hero, sorry.
Wonderful questions, everybody. We're now entering a 15-minute recess. Please go get a snack, get some water, coffee, whatever it is that you need to get through the last 45-minute hearing that we have after this. We've almost climbed the mountain. This is the longest day of hearings and we're almost there being done. So I again, thank all of you for your patience, for showing up and for hanging in there. It's not lost on me how difficult this is.
Well, thank you all for your time.
Don't forget to send the link.
Really quickly.
Yeah.
She'll be in, she just needs it for Greg.
Really quickly, before I have to break. And then I wanted to ask, so on Friday, you know, it's a 3-hour break in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
So it was from the break last year was for like this non-ed pray. And so that's the only reason why it's there. So I was gonna ask if you guys would be amenable to doing deliberations, maybe from like 10 to 5 or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Then it would be better